tonight. Could I have a roll call, please?
Yes, you may. Commissioner Abelman.
Here.
Commissioner Falk.
Here.
Commissioner Callahan.
Here.
Commissioner Bauer.
Present.
Commissioner Carlson.
Here.
And Chair Krazan.
Present.
We are missing Commissioner Kilroy, but we do have a quorum and we can conduct business.
Thank you. Commissioner Abelman, could you lead us in the pledge, please? Everyone rise, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Do I have a motion to approve the order of agenda?
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Are there any blue folder items?
Yes, we had 3 blue folder items tonight. The first 2 were the staff presentations with regards to items L1 and L2. And then we did receive public comment on the director's report pertaining to the upcoming strategic plan.
Do I need a motion to receive and file the blue folder items?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item F, the approval of affidavit for posting of the Harbor Commission meeting for September 9th and approval of the meeting minutes from August 12th. Do I have a motion and second to approve the consent calendar?
Motion to approve. And second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. There are no excluded consent calendar items and no public, and we're up to public participation on non-agenda items. If anyone would like to come forward with a comment on non-agenda items, you may do so at this time. And if there are any on Zoom, none on Zoom? Okay. We do not have a public hearing, so there are no item I ex parte communications and no item J public hearings. We do not have any items continued from previous agendas. So we're up to item L1, the quarterly public safety report.
Yeah, we're going to have a presentation from both our police department and fire department. We're going to lead off with the police department. We have Sergeant Bryant Weiss here. He's got some statistics to go over for the last quarter. I'll bring those up just over here, and he'll kind of go through a verbal report for you guys.
There's Matt. Sorry for being late all.
Glad you could
Good evening, everyone. I was told everybody had the at least the Pier and Harbor crime stats in your packet. So just to keep it simple, if you guys have questions or want to go over anything, please feel free to ask about the stats at this time or any other things you want to hear about from the police department related to the Pier and Harbor.
Thank you.
One thing it would be kind of good to have a way to visualize some of the, I guess the categories change all the time, but it would be so great to, if it was possible, to look at history in a graphical form in a way, right? You can see a trend of things that are, certain crimes that are rising.
And what are you looking for, like year by year?
Yeah.
Or you?
Well, even actually quarter by quarter would be good, but I
Okay.
guess in certain quarters, you're gonna have certain crimes that are gonna be historically high anyway. But it'd just be interesting to see if the trend line on those things.
Okay. This report gets produced by the police department's crime analyst, and I'll reach out to her with that, and we'd see. She creates those type reports all the time anyway, so I assume it would be easy to try and just tweak this. This is more just straight numbers month by month.
Yeah, no, thank you.
I lost my mouse. I can't scroll.
Well, you can't, because
I know,
that's,
I had the same thing. Go back to your PC.
yeah, then you can scroll.
Okay, there we go.
I'm curious if there's something that pinpoint discusses e-bikes, anything associated with e-bikes.
Yeah.
So I don't have the e-bike stats, at least separate to the peer area. I know the chief did the police chief did a presentation to council, I think it was last month, on the police department's efforts with e-bikes. The bike citations you would probably see here are probably just any bike.
Sure.
And it's not necessarily related. I think many days we probably cite more regular bikes than we do e-bikes on the pier.
Is that because of the sheer number of
Sheer
them?
number, it's just a volume
Okay.
game with that, yeah.
I'm curious with the e-bikes, is there, seems like maybe a lack of education in the community. It's like I noticed like on the section connecting the pier along Harbor Drive to Hermosa that says no e-bikes. But obviously e-bikes are using it. And I think once you get outside those areas, then e-bikes are allowed again. So is there any,
Yeah, that small section, kind of the newer bike path that's on
Yeah.
the west side of Harbor Drive, starting in Hermosa and going southbound to the pier, like to Captain Kidd's, that whole green painted section is specifically signed no e-bikes.
right,
We have been doing a ton of enforcement down there. Patrol is done. I mean, they're pretty much there every day doing e-bike enforcement. And that would have been covered in the numbers that the chief put out in that report. We've been also dealing pretty much the red light. There's a couple red lights there, stoplights, and then there's a couple stop signs at Captain Kidd's that nobody seems to follow. So we've been really working on that. Weekends it's really bad, especially trying to get into the marina parking lot, because if the bikes and pedestrians aren't yielding to the vehicles, then there's always a conflict there.
mhm,
Education side, we've done a lot of education e-bike wise with kids, with the high schools, with the district, and there has been a lot of partnership there. I guess maybe in some ways there's an expectation that adults know that you have to stop at a stop sign. But then again, I probably wouldn't have a job if we had adults doing what was expected of them. So, yeah, maybe we can look and I'll put the request up for, maybe we can do one of our signboards, electronic signboards down there on Harbor Drive, see if we can kind of push that e-bike traffic off of there.
Yeah, it just seemed like a kind of a little nuanced thing. My kid went to the e-bike safety thing for the middle schools and they didn't even, the people teaching it didn't even know.
Yeah,
So-
and in Redondo, there's only a couple places where bikes aren't allowed on sidewalks. Like the Esplanade is a place, the high school is a place, but it has to be per the municipal code specifically signed.
Mhm,
Obviously, in that area, the Harbor Drive, it is signed.
right.
So it may just need to be, we need to do a little bit better education. Maybe a signboard would work, something like that.
Mhm. And is there anything that you notice that we should be doing differently for keeping bikes and e-bikes out of the pier and International Boardwalk, Promenade?
So we had that electronic signboard out there for a long time, at least on the south side. The new sign package is landing now. So historically, there was a ton of places where there weren't signs on the pier, and now we're getting signs. And then all the old signs are being revamped with the new logo, and they're already probably halfway done. Public Works is about halfway done. This year, since about January, between my 2 patrol officers and the 2 municipal services officers, they've written probably close to 1,000 tickets down in the pier area. And that's for any of the, as we phrase it, the no-no-nos, no smoking, no drinking, no skateboarding, no bike riding. It's those blue signs that have kind of the prohibitions on the pier. So the signage alone is going to help, because there was a lot of just, I don't know, you can call it acceptable ignorance that they didn't know.
Right.
But now there's enough signage down there in all the right places. We actually worked with Public Works to get them at the pay stations. So when you're paying, you can see the rules of the road before you walk out into the pier. Those improvements we're already seeing between the enforcement and the signage. We're already seeing slowdown of some of the behaviors. And I'm pretty happy to see that. My office is right there, so if I sit and look out my window, you actually see a lot of people walking their bikes now, whereas a year ago, nobody walked their bike.
Mhm.
So it's slowly but surely coming along.
Okay, yeah, that's a good trend. I just wondered if there was anything, as we look to redo the promenade, little things that we could do that would improve it. I've seen, different times of day, even in the evening on the International Boardwalk, kids going by on their bikes with fishing poles and just a hazard, right, with all the pedestrians. And I don't know if it's because there's nothing obvious of like where to get off or not get on before or after fishing. So just if there are any ideas.
Yeah, the kids,
As we redo the
kids on
promenade.
e-bikes fishing were one of my busiest subjects this summer. It's so tough because I love to see kids out fishing,
Yeah,
not playing on their iPad or whatever.
right.
But there was some behavior that came with those kids. Hopping fences, damaging people's property, stealing people's property. So we did as much work with them as we could because a lot of them like to come to the pier and harbor to fish. And so we tried to do as much education as we could. If we didn't get compliance of the same kid the same time, second or third time, then calling parents works.
Sure.
Call it, in the afternoon from the police officer saying, come get your kid because his behavior is, unruly. It helps, but I don't know. The signage for sure is helping, but I don't know if that works with the kids on the e-bikes.
You're going 30 miles an hour, it's hard to see the sign.
True. That's a solid argument, but it is dangerous. And, eventually, with changes in the harbor and, we looked at doing the chicanes and with council for a while, and at the south end of the pier proper.
Right.
And Hermosa's done those kind of things. And some of that helps, some of it doesn't. It's just a matter of, some of it becomes a slalom and enjoyable for people to ride through faster instead of forcing them to get off their bike. But we're always open to try and find new ways to improve it.
Yeah, I didn't know if just in little bumps into, areas where there are no bikes allowed.
The problem
That
is then
kind of
you run
thing.
into issues with handicap
Handicap,
accessibility.
yeah.
Yeah, with the
Yeah.
ADA, which is way outside of my
Yep.
scope.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you're cited, how much is the fine?
So the courts don't like us to quote fines.
Okay.
But I did see somebody that got a bike ticket that was complaining on the internet, and it was with court fees and everything, it was like $485.
Wow.
Good.
Seems
So-
excessive. It seems
And
excessive.
I don't know, what the city gets out of that. Obviously, the court can add whatever fees and additions, but I think one ticket would be enough for most people.
Yeah, I
don't
would
think you
think
would
so.
have too many repeat offenders after the first ticket.
Right.
I have a question. What is animal incident? There's several different animal categories, and it seems to be quite large. It's below 925. It's got below code number 925.
There's no number associated.
Animal incidents, 260.
Yes.
But it has a separate one for,
It's on
no,
page-
I'm sorry, 317.
It's on page 16.
Okay. So animal incidents could be anything from an injured crow, an injured seagull,
Okay,
a sea lion on the beach, pretty much anything, somebody with a baby possum in their backyard.
okay,
Generally, most of it is all of our marine mammals and that kind of stuff. We get
okay.
sometimes one sea lion on the beach, you get 20 calls a day.
Of
So it
course.
stacks the numbers really quickly.
Okay.
This is based on calls, not on, so if each one of us were to call you about the same one thing, that would be 7 calls?
Correct. Each call will get its own incident through our dispatch. We may not respond because we'll say, hey, marine mammal rescue's already on their way and we don't need to go again, but
So this 260, it could be some sort of multiple, is divisible by some number.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Rob.
How's the skateboard park been?
It's been pretty good. We haven't had any major incidents. We do still get some adults with smoking cigarettes or smoking marijuana or drinking. And we're at a very zero tolerance for that. So pretty much, I don't even think we've arrested anybody out of the skate park in maybe 3 months, 4 months. And, you know, most of the arrests we were getting out of there were somebody smoking or drinking, we contact them and they have a warrant for their arrest. It was pretty inane. We definitely we've had some calls where the security guard's not getting compliance an hour after sunset. But that has kind of slowed down a lot. I think everybody, the general skating public understands the rules now, and the behavior has actually been pretty good. And there's a lot of, Saturday mornings, there's a lot of young families that come down there with little kids, and the moms sit and sip coffee and the kids get to skate. And it's been pretty good.
Yeah, that's great. The noise at night was a concern from public comment that we had when that was going in. So it's you know, it's good to hear it's under control. Understand there was a shooting on the pier quite a while ago, but the sentence recently, any comment on
Correct.
that?
So the suspect that we arrested for the murder in the pier parking structure in the stairway just last week pled guilty to murder and is being sentenced to 25 years to life in prison.
Thanks.
That case is finally adjudicated without a trial. He pled guilty to it.
Just kind of going around the area, as AES is closing down, are they still providing good security there, or is that getting on your radar at all?
I think we had just one incident that I remember of a trespassing. They've been keeping their gate locked a lot. I think eventually when they start their rundown, that's a big piece of property and they're going to have to deal with it. But at least at this time, I'm not hearing of a lot of transient issues there.
Yeah, as it gets dark at night, I'm now seeing the lights off there at night, and I've never seen that before. You know, in whatever 35 years of living here, to see that place go dark is pretty wild.
Every time I've gone by, there's a guard in that guard shack and the
Yeah.
gate's been closed. So I don't think they've just completely abandoned it. But
Yeah.
I mean, if issues arise, we're going to surely jump on it because it's just the size of the property. We did have that one fire that was back behind there, and I think that was transient related, but.
Yeah, I hope they take good care of it and it doesn't roll over to something you and we have to take care of. So I want to thank you again. I said this last month, but you're here this month. So as I said last month, I lost some gear and Sergeant Weiss helped me get it back through his knowledge of the pier and the pier community. And I just want to say again, you know, as I've been spreading the word about this, I've been encouraging people to file a police report, call the police, call the non-emergency number rather than get into an altercation themselves. And it's kind of funny, Saturday night, a neighbor called me up and said, yeah, there's kind of a van I don't like parked in the side street next to me. And I said, call the emergency number. I think you guys ended up arresting 4 guys and recovering 3 stolen vehicles. So our little fishing rod adventure, you know, turned into something a little bit bigger.
For sure. We always want those opportunities. And many people think, oh, it's just a fishing pool. I'm not going to call. I don't want to bother. But if it's a trend or something that we need to look at, or we have an opportunity to deal with the problem, we always want those opportunities. And we don't get those opportunities if people don't call.
Yeah, so thanks again.
You're welcome.
Other questions?
Thank you very much for coming.
I had
Thank you.
one more thing.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you noticed an uptick in drug use at the end of Marina Way this year?
No more than it is every year.
Okay, it just seemed
It's
more and
kind
more
of a place where
observation.
people like to go drink beer and smoke pot.
Yeah,
I don't think it's any more or any less. There was some fireworks that were getting fired off there. And I got tipped off of who it was. And I went and had a talk with him about how, you know,
Mhm.
how things are going to work. And they stopped.
Nice.
So that was the last big problem. And it was, super late at night and big fireworks, and everybody that was in the area was being woken up to it. So
Well, thank you very much.
you're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. We're going to move forward to the fire department now. They have a PowerPoint presentation. We have Jason May from the fire department. We also have Kurt Mahoney, our new harbor master, who's here as well.
Welcome.
Just wait a minute. Good evening, Harbor Commissioners, Division Chief Jason May, and Harbor Master Kurt Mahoney.
Good evening.
We'll get into that right off the bat. I think I have a lot of good news items to share with you tonight based on your feedback from our last quarterly reports. We heard your voices and your concerns regarding moving our Harbor Patrol forward, the enforcement of some of the issues that have become problematic in the harbor, and taking a different approach than what we've traditionally done in the past. So I'm here to introduce Kurt, a gentleman I've worked with for over 30 years in public safety, from the ambulance days a long, long time ago to our time as firefighters, to working as captains together, and then he's recently moved into our deputy fire marshal position and now is transitioning into the harbor master role, which we haven't had a dedicated harbor master in King Harbor for over 20 years. John Pitzer was our last dedicated harbor master in King Harbor. So this is a very exciting pilot project for us to move forward with. This came about, I'll give the mayor some recognition, and our innovative fire chief, Pat Butler, looking to move around some administrative assignments within our fire department and dedicate somebody specifically to the harbor and champion some of the concerns that you've expressed to us over the years, and specifically our last meeting. So this is Captain Mahoney. Next slide. And why is Captain Mahoney taking on this new role as our harbor master? He has served as our deputy fire marshal for the last 3 years, which kind of runs our fire inspection program, is one element. And I know one of the concerns that we've had is specifically dock inspection programs. There will be no fee with the initial rollout of the program, but he is going to use his expertise in that other area to apply a systematic enforcement of clearing the docks, cleaning up the docks in basins 1, 2, and 3, and taking a more systematic and digitally approach. One of the challenges we currently sit in is we have 3 different shifts. They all run a little bit differently, and there's nobody there kind of Monday through Friday kind of making sure we're taking a systematic approach for that. So Kurt's previous expertise in that setting will translate directly to kind of cleaning up that specific issue and being systematic as you go through that. Kurt has worked for the Redondo Beach Fire Department for the last 25 years, 8 years as a fire captain, again, the last 3 as that deputy fire marshal. Not only just doing fire inspections, but he's really pioneered our community engagement role. So he is the head of our CERT program, if you're familiar with that. He does a lot of community CPR training. And in general, when you want a representative from our fire department, Kurt is our shining star of our department. But that'll translate very directly to all of you as commissioners, because he's going to give you his business card here when we wrap up this presentation. And when you want something or have a concern, please contact him directly. He is going to occupy the space in the crow's nest in front of Fire Station 3, which somebody hasn't set up there. Chief Kaufman sat up there very briefly, but that was John Pitzer's office back 20 years ago. And now he's going to have kind of eyes and ears on the main channel all the time, and then also be available for you, not only via email, but also direct contact. And his real specialty is listening, hearing what you're saying, and taking action on that. So as he transitions into that role, one of my jobs is to help bring him up to speed, kind of the specialty aspect of the harbor itself, but the conversation, the engagement, the systematic approach to solving some of the issues that you've brought to us is going to be his real area of specialty, and brings a lot of expertise into that area. Next slide, please. So priority programs. This is kind of Kurt's marching orders as he steps into this new role. He officially started his new role on September 1st. He's still moving out of our Fire Station 1 and down to Fire Station 3. But the big thing is encouraging the dialogue with the community down there. I know we kind of took a small step forward this past storm season. We put out a letter to the boaters asking people to maintain their vessels down there. But he's actually going to take that to the next level in a digitally and hard copy form quarterly newspaper that kind of makes people aware of the issues that are going on in the harbor, and then also brings up things like vessel maintenance prior to winter. And if you're not going to be down at your boat for the next 3 or 4 months during the wintertime, please make sure your bilge works, that you have somebody checking in on your vessel on a regular basis, and then you're maintaining your property there. So it'll be a good way for us to engage the public with kind of easy, preventable issues that continue to surface down in the harbor. He's also going to engage all of our marina managers, because again, we have 4 different marina managers down there that all operate a little bit differently, and having quarterly meetings with them is going to kind of partner with them in enforcing some of the things that I think all of you have found frustrating in the recent past. The dock inspection, again, Kurt's experience as a fire inspector will directly relate to a dock inspection program and vigorously enforcing Title 12 citations. And I'll get to citations in just one second, but we are doing education-based enforcement at this point and looking to transition to firmer enforcement through Harbor Patrol, probably some point later in the date, but at this point, we're still in education-based enforcement. If we have a problematic individual that is not following directive based on that education-based informant, we rely on our partnership with the police department to take that next level approach. California law changed about a decade ago about the rules and how Harbor Patrol work, which is why there's been a change of enforcement, why we've gone to that education-based model. But unless our Harbor Patrol officers engage in enforcement greater than 50% of the time, they're not considered peace officers by the eyes of the state of California, which is why we've changed to this different model of enforcement. It doesn't take that education-based informant or the strict enforcement in partnership with the police department off the table, but that's why there's been a slight change in the model. But Captain Mahoney, or Deputy Harbor Master Mahoney, will look to kind of re-implement that stronger enforcement. We've had a lot of concerns about mooring permits, specifically people occupying new, overextending their new slips as they occupy those new slips. So Harbor Master Mahoney is going to kind of refine that project and probably shift to what you're maybe familiar with as a Santa Barbara model, where vessels are measured prior to occupying the space to confirm they fit in the length of the slip. Right now, we will go inspect it after the vessel already occupies the slip. Typically, there's some overhang, especially if they're very highly sought after slips. And we're looking to reduce that overhang outside of the slip. So if you have a 30-foot boat, it needs to be in a 30-foot slip. And then also, we've heard this loud and clear, is the enforcement of California boating cards. Again, we're doing education-based interactions with the public at this point, but when our Harbor Patrol officers are engaging the public at this point, they're asking for the boating card. We're not tracking that at this point. That'll be one of his first orders of business, but as of January 1st, 2025, all boaters are required to have that boating card by the state of California. And when we meet with the public, whether it's they're speeding in the main channel or they don't have enough PFDs or whatever it is, the first thing they're asking for is that boating card, if it meets the criteria of having that boating card. So we heard your last concerns at the last meeting. We want to make sure we're moving forward with those items. And Harbor Master Mahoney is going to really champion those causes for you and any other that you bring to us. Next slide. So abandoned vessels. I know this has kind of been an albatross in the harbor, where there are vessels that go up and down the state of California and occupy a space in a harbor until they're either kicked out, boats break, or it doesn't work. We've refined our process. The slip occupants that are considered abandoned vessels, we work closely with the marina managers, and they typically know at the front of that how to dispose of those vessels, but we really look at that as more of a marina manager issue than directly us. What we're working directly with is the moorings and then the anchorage area. And if a vessel is at the moorings or in the anchorage area for greater than 24 hours without paying mooring fees or checking in with our harbor patrol officers to have permission to anchor in that anchorage area, we start the lien process on their vessels. And we use the model. This is the same model that's used by Marina Del Rey for the disposal of vessels. Go through that lien process. They're illegal, anchored. We do have a lot of flexibility through Title 12 to take control of those vessels, but we try to follow the greatest letter of the law and go to the greatest degree we can to make sure that people that have this, maybe all they have is this vessel that they kind of go up and down the coast in, and we want to make sure we're going the extra mile for them. But if they're ditching boats in our harbor, we go through the lien process. Once that lien process is completed, we actually have grant funds that have been secured through the Waterfront and Economic Development Department, and we just dispose of those vessels. So grant funding covers a portion of that. There's actually a sidebar fund through the marina managers that also cover disposal of vessels. But you may see a vessel down there for a month or two, but it won't be longer than that before they're hauled out, crushed up, and disposed of, specific to the mooring field and the anchorage area. So those are what we heard last time when we met with you, some of the concerns you have. That's our next step in this process. Harbor Master Mahoney is really going to champion your causes and be receptive to your messaging. Again, he's in a pilot program, so he may serve in this role for 6 months. He may serve in 9 months. A lot of it's going to be dependent on the feedback from all of you, and then how successful we can be in kind of advancing some of those projects that we listed on the second slide of my But we want to make sure that our King Harbor is a shining star that it should be within the city. Those 1,500 slips down there are high priority of the city, especially with the boat ramp approaching. We want to make sure that our harbor shines, and in partnership with our police department, waterfront and economic development, public works department, that the harbor looks like the great place that it should be. So I'd like to actually give a big round of applause to Harbor Master Mahoney, because that's a big lift. And anytime you take on a new job, you got to kind of rewrite the script. We will work with former Harbor Master John Pitzer. I do see him on a somewhat frequent basis. And so we'll bring in, sit with him and kind of get what the lay of the land used to look like and then how we can adapt that to the current model. So that's my general harbor updates. I'll go over the stats very briefly and answer any questions you have once I go through those stats. If you want to bring up the 2024 stats.
This quarter one.
It should be year-to-date 21, August 21, 2024. It's an actual chart. Should be a line item list. So a few trends in the data. If you look through the chart, it should be actually like an Excel format.
Oh.
If you want to go back. That one probably. Okay. So in your agenda, you should have received the 2024 stats, the 2023 stats, and then all the way back to, I think, 2021. Our format changed in 2023 about how we collect the information. I went through and kind of compared year to year and identified certain trends, which I hope to speak with you about. In general, we're not responding as much as we did year to date last year. So last year, year to date, we had about 683 responses by Harbor Patrol. This year, it's about 564. There are two reasons for that. The first is, and I'll speak to this in a moment, but towards the end of 2023, based on direction from this group, we removed the Harbor Patrol from our fire responses to the different parts of Redondo Beach. So they no longer, unless it's a disaster in the city of Redondo Beach, leave the harbor on fire responses. So that's about, I think, last year to date was about 50 responses. So that's 50 that are off the table because now they stay dedicated to the harbor for all those types of issues. The other is that August isn't fully reported. It's just to the August 21st, not the actual end of the month. So there's 10 days missing out of those stats. Our analysts did what we had when we were asked for it instead of the actual quarterly report. So really this should end at, I guess, June, at the end of June. But you got some extra months just to know how things are trending to give you the most information possible. You'll see also a significant reduction in the fire alarm bells responses on there. The Harbor Patrol were going to all the hotels that line Marina Drive there. We have taken them out of those run orders. Now we just send a fire engine from Broadway to go to those locations because, again, the voice from this body was that you want to dedicate it to a water-based response. So when Sonesta has an alarm bells ringing, their fire alarm goes off, we have a fire engine respond there instead of the Harbor Patrol members leaving their station and going. So the same thing with Portofino, same thing with Shade. So you will notice, and we'll speak to this about the significant events that have gone on since the last time we met, but there's actually a decrease in the number of spills that are reported. There were 19 year to date last year. This year there's 7. However, 2 of our 7 this year were pretty significant fuel spills, and a third that had some sort of magnitude to it. So that's an odd data point because we have never had as large a fuel spills, at least in my recent memory, as those 2 that we had. One in the springtime, one on July 1st, and then a smaller magnitude on July 21st. But we've never had the kind of spills that we've had this year. So I don't know why the magnitude's gone up, and I'm not sure why the frequency's gone down. So the one thing is we are well versed in a larger fuel spill, especially in Basin 1, which they all happen to happen in Basin 1, unfortunately. We also heard your voice about vessel registration. That'll be an element of our dock inspections, making sure vessels are registered and have current registrations. Those have gone up to 21 year to date. That's probably an underreported stat. But as we walk the docks, we'll be checking for vessel registration on the docks and verifying the goods. Mooring permits are also underreported. It showed we had only done 1 or 2, I think, on here. That's definitely, we have 2. I know they did 4 last week. So it's just an underreported stat. The 2 different categories here are one are 911 calls. When somebody calls 911 related to a harbor issue, that goes to our dispatch center. We dispatch our Harbor Patrol. The directed patrol ones are when our Harbor Patrol are out on the main channel patrolling the basins and they see, somebody overhanging or, somebody doesn't have the proper PFDs when they're just out boating around. Those are self-initiated calls. Those are the bottom half of the page as you read it. So those are the trends I saw. We did mention the 2 large fuel spills. The biggest one was July 1st, which we estimate to be approximately 100 gallons of diesel were spilled into Basin 1. The boat owner was responsible for the cleanup and mitigation of that. They used a company called Patriot Services, which is a very all-encompassing cleanup service. I'm confusing the two. The one on July 1st, we never determined what boat it came from. It was on the same dock as the one in the springtime on opening day of King Harbor Yacht Club. The second one was a similar size magnitude, but we were never able to determine what vessel was leaking that large amount of diesel. But the marina manager did coordinate the response and removal of all that diesel. We just never were never able to identify which vessel the fuel was coming out of. There was a kayaker that drowned inside the harbor on July 19th in the Anchorage area. A vessel had pulled up to drop anchorage in the area. I noticed a gentleman floating face down. Harbor Patrol responded out, pulled him out of the water, initiated CPR. They weren't successful in resuscitating him, unfortunately, but it's the first drowning we've had in the harbor in some time. So unfortunately, it was believed to be a medically related cause after investigating. Like the gentleman had a long cardiac history, was told not to be kayaking in the harbor, and then was found face down, unfortunately, in our harbor, which is unfortunate. I'm sure you all heard about the fin whale at Torrance Beach. Our people did help out with that. They took all the marine biologists out to help do a survey and assessment of that whale once it was hauled off with our Harbor Patrol members. And then this is actually very exciting. Off of PV Point, a vessel overturned with 7 people on board. Fish and Game was out doing a patrol. The Fish and Game vessel that's housed at our Fire Station 3. They found this vessel overturned with 7 people in the water, just out on a patrol. They called it into Coast Guard, which dispatched Baywatch Redondo and Harbor Patrol. They went out, rescued the people. They actually flipped the boat over, towed it back to Redondo Beach. It actually sank in the mooring area. The LA County lifeguards came out with dive bags, floated the vessel, took it to the bow's hoist, and got it out. There were no significant injuries reported with the 7 people that were in the water. So, and last but not least, to kind of draw out a couple additional updates is our Harbor Patrol fleet is going through a lot of improvements. They are currently in the fireboat, which has no direct markings on it because we're upgrading our graphics package. It was painted. It had never been painted in the 20-year life of that boat. So it's just a kind of a gray boat right now. It doesn't say Harbor Patrol inside, but they are out doing patrols in that boat. We upgraded the power outboards on there. And then our front line, the typical Harbor Patrol boat, is actually being refitted with additional motors right now and painted. So everything will look the same in the next month or two, but we're just upgrading everything to make it match and has new power units. The white sea bass pens are under construction and moving forward. We anticipated, at least at our last meeting, that those being installed in the fall/winter time, and those will be kind of next to the splash wall in front of the Harbor Patrol office, and hopefully a great project both for the community and for the harbor itself. Yeah, and the last but not least, and this will be a major role for Harbor Master Mahoney, is we're working very closely not only with John Pitzer, but also Marina Del Rey sheriffs and lifeguards. They do have a large boat ramp that sees a lot of volume. We want to make sure we're adequately prepared for a boat ramp because it's going to change the frequency use and the type of boater that's using our harbor. So we want to make sure that when that is completed, that we are up and running. So we're kind of plotting that towards the end of 2026, but as we do this pilot program with the harbor master, we want to make sure we're up to speed when that boat ramp opens. So we're ready for some of all the different issues that come with a different way than how we're doing business today. So, and that's one of the major motivating factors of bringing in a harbor master too, is to be prepared once that boat ramp is installed. So I apologize for a lot of talking and a lot of talking very quickly, but I am very excited about having Kurt serve in that role as harbor master. I think it's something that's long overdue and something this group and the harbor deserves, is having somebody dedicated oversight about what happens down there.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
If you want to, I don't know if you want to come up, it's going to be directed towards you, sort of. Sure. How does your oversight work when you're off? I imagine you'll be taking a couple of days a week off. I would like to think that you would. And so how does your oversight work? Who's underneath you? What happens if something happens when you're not, on duty in the crow's nest?
Whether I'm on vacation or on leave or it's a typical day off. I would imagine, I don't know for sure, but I would imagine those incidents, those issues, those would be directed to the supervisors down on the boats initially, and then they can reach out to me. In my current capacity, while I'm defined by a 40-hour work week, I put in a lot more than that. And that's, I'm not saying that like to toot my own horn, that's just how I roll. I'm local, I'm South Bay. Like, I don't encourage it, but I've had people call me at midnight, right, because of ... And for me, I let them know, like, that's not a big deal. Now, if I'm getting called every night at midnight, that's a problem, right?
Sure, well, this is
but
public,
if-
so
yeah,
I'm not telling the public to call you
Sure.
at midnight.
I
I'd like to
understand.
respect your
But
time
I guess
off.
the point I'm trying to make is I'm not defined by a certain amount of hours or number of days of the week. My dedication is well beyond that.
Sure, I mean, and I appreciate that. I'm just concerned, I'm just curious as to the hierarchy below you. Like, how does it work if you're off? Is there somebody else, like an
Would either be
assistant?
Grant,
Okay,
Darren, or Chad E. Smith.
okay,
So, yeah.
okay, thank you.
So what Kurt can really bring to the table for us is systems and processes to ensure like a successful outcome.
Thank you.
He's an additional piece to our puzzle in the harbor where we have our boat captains that are on duty 24/7. We also have people like me, duty division chiefs that are also 24/7. Kurt's a new player in that role. So if there's a large fuel spill, our boat captains will coordinate that, and somebody like me or one of my counterparts will also coordinate that from an emergency management standpoint. But the systems and processes is really where Kurt's gonna bring a ton of value to the harbor. So emergency response is gonna continue on. That's how we're operating today. But he just adds an additional element, an additional area of expertise in that setting.
Thank you.
Let me just start by saying we're super excited to have Harbor Master Mahoney
Yes, we are.
and the scope that you've kind of laid out as the target. I do want to better understand, you said pilot project, you don't know how long it's going to last, 6 to 9 months. Is that pilot with him as harbor master or having a harbor master at all? And then I'm wondering, like, what are the criteria at the conclusion that you're going to assess?
So our intent is to hit the ground running, show value to you, kind of hit on all these issues that you've identified as being problematic in the harbor, and then hopefully approach the city council next year with funding for the position.
Okay.
Kurt traditionally does a lot of fire inspections. He continues to be our deputy fire marshal by payroll item, but we have additional people that are, and he himself has done a ton of work in advance. So he's kind of pushed his workload forward. Other people have taken up the slack. And so we have a unique setting where we can kind of move him into this role, show value, show that we can address a lot of the issues that you consider to be problematic, and then approach it for funding. And it's part of our budgeting process in the future. So the intent is, like, let's produce something, and then it's easier to ask for something when you can say, like, this is what you're getting for your investment.
Awesome. Yes.
The fuel spills, do we have to report that to other agencies other than?
Oh, yeah.
Figured as much. I know there's reporting quantities depending upon what the hazardous material is. I just wasn't sure what it was for diesel and gasoline and whatnot. So the second part of that question goes back to when we had sewer spills into the harbor. So I know we've got a great system. We jump through all the hoops. We do everything we're supposed to do with regards to reporting to whether it's the Regional Water Quality Control Board or California EPA, whatever it may be. Do we, and I think the answer is Nixle or something, does it go out to the boaters? Does it go out to the people in the harbor themselves? And my concern / issue, especially with sewer spills, is people are in the water. So what's the process? Do we have a process for the public being notified?
We do. It's actually in development right now. It's called the Boaters Alert Network. It's going to be an opt-in exercise based on your location within the harbor. We're going to separate it in between Basin 1, Basin 2, Basin 3. You can opt into one notification system. You can opt into all three if you want all the news. It's in beta testing right now, so we're not quite rolling it out just yet. If you recall, I think we had a topic on it, maybe it was 6-7 months ago or so, and that's where the idea was really formed. So it's not only spills, it'll be road closures, it'll be anything that truly affects the harbor, and we need to get the message out.
Okay, so what about the people who aren't opting into that, or people who aren't tenants of the harbor who have come down to use their inflatable SUP or whatever to paddle around the harbor? How do they get notified?
So they'll be notified by hard notification by our harbor patrol officers. So if the area is closed due to a sewage spill, there's just like we've had the fuel spills, there's an area that's been marked off and identified as a lack of public access. So they'll have direct contact with the harbor patrol officers.
Okay, just want to make sure that the public is somehow being notified not to come down, stay out of the water, or whatever.
Sure.
I know we do it with the beaches to some extent, and I know we do it with all the agencies, but I mean, wanted to make sure we had a formal method for notifying the public. Thanks.
Other questions? Yes, Roger.
No, I'm thrilled to have a harbor master. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled too. I mean, as you went along, you answered all my questions, and it kind of terrifies me. You've clearly been listening to my questions for 6 years now. So, I'm thrilled to have you on board. I'm really excited with everything you just said. This is so promising. I'm really glad to hear you hit the boat ramp in the future. This is great. I look forward to this.
I just hope we want to produce. We want to show that
Yeah.
the value. And so I'll again extend huge kudos to our mayor and Fire Chief Patrick Butler and being kind of like, how can we move our pieces around to accomplish a very important part of our city's mission and what should be a shining star for our community. So, and they got very creative with how we can kind of do a pilot program, show value, and then hopefully come back to you at some point.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks a lot.
So out of curiosity, was there a budget increase for it? Because at some one point, not at all. So that's actually more kudos to you. If you were able to do that without actually a budget increase.
Again, I can't take any of the credit for it. Again, the drive of our mayor and Fire Chief Butler were kind of able to move the pieces around to then show what we can do first and then ask for the budget to increase. So, and we have a very competent staff at this point that can kind of compensate for the loss of workforce and then hopefully redirect that at some other level in the future. So we anticipate this running through 6 to 9 months to fiscal year next year and then hopefully asking for additional funding.
Any other questions?
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank
We're
you
excited.
so much.
Very good.
Thanks, Jason. Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, are there any public comments for item L1?
Mark Hansen, King Harbor boater. This is, of course, phenomenally good news. I remember 25 years ago when the mayor at the time asked us to form the King Harbor Boaters Advisory Panel, and one of the first things we asked each other, well, gosh, who should we talk to? Who's in charge of the harbor? And after a little research, we came to the conclusion that nobody was in charge of the harbor. I say that tongue in cheek because, of course, we have several great organizations. Our waterfront staff is wonderful at what they do. You guys are wonderful at what they do. John Pitzer was wonderful what he did. What we meant is, yeah, there wasn't a single point of contact like this is going to create. So it's just over the top wonderful. I've been in contact with Captain Mahoney. I've been to the board of directors of King Harbor Yacht Club, and of course they said, absolutely, Mark, use the building for a meet and greet. So I'm going to be looking for a date that works for the building and that works for Captain Mahoney. When we find a date that works, I'll put together a big meet and greet, and we'll invite the entire harbor and you guys, so we all meet Kurt and also meet each other. There's still a lot of us in the harbor that don't know each other, so we'll solve that at the same time. So wonderful news. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment on L1? Any on Zoom?
No Zoom participants and no e-comments.
Okay. Then we will move to item L1, discussion and possible action on the design of a Seaside Lagoon Rehabilitation Project and provide direction on whether to pursue a complete redesign that would transform and modernize the facility or a renovation that enhances the existing equipment and infrastructure.
Yeah, thank you so much. Can you bring the PowerPoint up on the main screen, Mio? Thank you. So yeah, we're here to talk about Seaside Lagoon. This has been a highly anticipated project. We're really looking to get some direction from you tonight before ultimately going to City Council for a final decision on which direction we head towards. As you know, we've undergone efforts to revitalize our Seaside Lagoon, and what we're tasked with first is really project scope. Do we want to tackle a complete redo of the lagoon, or do we just simply want to fix the underlying infrastructure issues plaguing the site today? We'll get into both options tonight. Before we head to City Council, we want your opinion on the subject. Your opinion will inform City Council and hopefully help them make a decision. In terms of next steps, once the overall project scope has been decided upon by Council, the consultant and staff will begin the entitlement process, which to get more specific is kind of doing the environmental analysis, the studies, and getting back in front of you guys to actually get official approval of entitlements. Once entitlements are in place, building permits can be sought, and then construction can begin. Here's the lagoon as it sits today. We've got 2 buildings on the north side of the site that are fairly tired, a concrete bulkhead that separates the lagoon water from the promenade and the hand launch to the west. There's an equipment area behind one of the buildings, kind of in the northeast corner there, that really isn't screened at all. For the most part, the site is active during the summer months, but does sit vacant for the remaining 9 months, save a few special events here and there. Let's see here. What you can't see is the rather outdated infrastructure that lies underneath. What it currently does is it pulls water from the ocean through a pipe. The water goes through the AES site, previously to cool its turbines, and then it gets filled into this lagoon area here where we treat it with chlorine. Before we discharge it back into the ocean, we go through a process to dechlorinate the water, and we have some government agencies that regulate us and make sure that we're doing that accurately. If not, we get fined. What we've also become painfully aware of is once you take ownership of the water and treat it, you become responsible for everything else that's in the water as well. So we're adding chlorine to it and we're taking chlorine out, but if anything got picked up throughout that entire process I just explained, federal agencies look at us and they fine us for anything that's left in there. And we're not capable of removing some of those things. So we get routine fines year in and year out. And for the most part, this project wants to fix that, okay? Let me go to the next slide to kind of explain that. Before we get into design, I do want to talk about some limitations here. So we do have Measure C. Measure C stipulates that any renovation cannot reduce the square footage of the site itself, and the water feature that's within the site can't decrease either. In addition, the parking stalls that serve the facility can't be reduced, and views along Harbor Drive must be maintained. And when it says maintained, at least 40% of the existing view from Harbor Drive must be kept. The state of California also has some regulations. They originally built this to be an introduction to the ocean, and we got to kind of keep that intent when we're redesigning this. It's got to remain closed from the ocean, be truly an introduction to it, not the ocean. And it must be accessible to all ages and abilities. And then we've also got the King Harbor's amenities plan. And what we're seeking to do through that amenities plan, through the vision, is to improve year-round access, make it truly usable, not just the summer months. We want it to be busy all the time. Some of the amenities that were approved through the amenities plan, through community output and our outreach efforts, was a lawn, fire pits, volleyball courts, new restrooms, a children's play area, a rentable venue, somewhere you'd be proud to hold an event, and then a lap pool. The amenities plan does say, hey, we do have some spatial concerns out here. We might not be able to fit all of this, but this is our wish list, essentially. So let's start. This is option one. It fixes the infrastructure so that we're not utilizing ocean water anymore. It's a system called a closed loop system. It's very similar to what you would have at your residential pool. You bring in water from your utility provider, you chlorinate it, right? And then when you dump it, it actually goes into the sewer. This option includes shifting the water in this plan to the left, which is actually to the north towards the old Joe's Crab Shack site. We want to reutilize the existing bulkhead. I'll use my pointer here, which is this guy right here, to save money. So we'll refurbish this, shift the water in this direction, which will then maximize the open space area available between the California Surf Club and the water element. We think by doing this, we're maintaining the state's intent. We've got, a beach-like entry, which is accessible to all ages and disabilities. It's going to be salt water. It's going to have a sandy bottom, right? Certain requirements require that the bottom of the pool area, the water feature, has to be concrete, but doesn't say we can't cover it with sand to kind of mimic the look and feel of the beach, right? Now, this option in this plan view right here shows that this is drainable. You can kind of see the outline of the larger lagoon area when it's completely full. But this actually allows for us to drain it up to 80% with just about 20% remaining. This is considered the deep end, if you will. And it would be available year-round, providing access to anybody who would like to swim, even during the cold winter months, if need be. We've got 2 buoy systems here. It was an idea from our subcommittee, where instead of a lap pool, which was mentioned in the amenities plan as being a desire, instead of locating an official lap pool, mimicking ocean water swimming by swimming around buoys in a saltwater environment. We think this would, drive people who could brave the cold elements during the winter, but at the same time allows us to decrease the overall footprint of the water on a short-term basis for larger events, such as beach life or any other venue, or just for the off-season to maximize the landside area of things, right? I'm going back to the previous image here. This option also includes new water slides, a splash pad, and of course those swimming buoys that I mentioned. You can see that the existing buildings would remain as is with option 1, so we would leave those as is. And in total, this option would cost just under $7 million at $6.96 million. So for 6.9, we get brand new infrastructure. We're meeting the intent of the state when they originally funded the site. We're meeting all of our Measure C requirements. We're shifting the water to the north to increase the open space portion. We're allowing for year-round swimming, and it's drainable to increase programmable space for larger events. And it includes a makeshift fence, a temporary fence. So if we desire, we can close off the water side and open up the land side and operate it like a park and just make it open, free of charge so that nobody has to pay an entry fee to gain access there. So you can see we've got $11 million appropriated for this project. Of that, just over 3.1 million is afforded to our consultant to help design the project. They'll also be helping us with the next step, which is the entitlement process with any coastal commission approvals. They're going to be getting plans ready for permitting. They're going to help us find a construction company, and they're going to provide construction oversight as well. That's what's included in the 3.1. So we've got about $7.8 million available. So you can see that we do have the money for this option. We could get entitlements and then right away start building as soon as possible with about 800 grand to spare. Option 2. Option 2 would be everything that I just mentioned for option 1. We're going to do all of that. We'd fix the infrastructure, shift the water, sandy bottom, salt water, all that good stuff. But the existing buildings would be demolished, and we would construct 2 new 2-story buildings with an added rooftop element to those buildings. And that would really be our revenue generator. It would be our rentable venue that you could have a wedding or an event. It would accommodate ticket sales, offices for employees, break rooms for the lifeguards, maybe a small concession area for sunscreen, towels, just maybe knickknacks that you forgot. And just minor things, new restrooms. And of course, it would house all the back of house stuff, the equipment, the pumps, all that good stuff. The way that it's kind of situated, the buildings would have the back of house facing both Portofino Way and the parking lot. So theoretically, deliveries and maintenance could access from behind here without having to go inside the lagoon to get access to those areas. And then let's see here. We've actually, if you remember, there's a kind of a drop-off area off of Portofino Way. Mm-hmm. We're actually taking that area back. And in this example, and there's another example that I'm going to want your feedback on. In this example, we're utilizing it more for like a group staging area before you actually pay for your ticket to get in. And then in addition to all that, we've got some shade structures, we've got fire pits, we've got landscaping. This is a dual-sided restroom with doors facing the promenade and doors facing the lagoon. Obviously, it would allow for when the entire facility is fenced off and you have to pay to get in, users of the hand launch would still have a restroom to use. And then when, in an instance where we had the temporary fence lined up and this was open to the public like a park would be, a restroom would still be included as well. We've also got a children's playground area mentioned right here. New fencing, pedestrian pathways, volleyball courts, picnic tables, the whole gamut, right? There's also an area, it's not really depicted all that great in this image, but there would be access to the California Surf Club. We're not providing any food service, but in partnership with our neighbor, you could get food if you wanted to, right? Here are some design concepts that the public and the subcommittee seem to favor. This is our nature inspired, just to kind of get you excited about the design. We'll get mainly into design when the entitlement stage happens. This is mainly about site layout and scope, but I just kind of wanted to let you see where the design is headed. This would be the view from Portofino Way. Here's one from the interior of the lagoon itself. You can see this is the first story, the second story, and then that rooftop element. And then here's kind of a site plan that just shows the lagoon pushed over. This isn't exactly, this was kind of an early concept, but it just shows you how the architecture would work with the site. Option 2's got a large price tag. It's $31 million. Obviously, we don't have that money right now, so physically, we wouldn't be able to pursue this option, but staff and the subcommittee are actually proposing that we do this in a phased approach. So we're asking that you provide direction for us to seek the $31 million option, and then we would approach it in 4 phases. So we'd get entitlements and the environmental reviews and coastal commission approval for the full gamut, and then we'd immediately start on phase 1, which is the infrastructure, shifting the building over. We'd keep the buildings as is, right? Phase 2 would include brand new perimeter fencing, the new dual-facing restroom, the landscaping, the pedestrian paths, and the site furnishings like the fire pits, the picnic tables, the volleyball courts, things like that. That's just over $7.5 million. So we'd have to seek additional funding for that option, right? Phase 3 would be demo of the existing buildings, construction of those 2 new buildings that I just showed you. And then phase 4 would be construction of a pedestrian promenade. I've got some options I'm gonna run through with you guys, but that ranges depending on the option that you guys favor between 460 grand and 3.25 million, okay? So before we get into, how you want us to proceed, I do have some options I want to discuss with you regarding the promenade and the building placement. This is the building this is one option for the building placement. We went over it. It kind of pushes the building into that corner over there, but doesn't utilize the bulb out as much as the next option. This one, it's kind of got a U-shaped, architecturally balanced, makes sense from an architectural standpoint. It does provide for that kind of gathering area, if you will, people kind of getting their affairs in order before they pay to get in. The second option is an approach in which we really capitalize on that added area. And what I like about this approach is that it pushes the buildings up and really increases the open space that we lost between the lagoon and the buildings because of the building placement before. While expanding the square footage of Seaside Lagoon is a good thing, this truly expands the usability of Seaside Lagoon and increases the capacity, if you will, right? Because you could put more people in place right here. This isn't to say this is exactly how the building placement would have to be. It would just be an encouragement for the design team to utilize the bulb out area more and come up with a creative solution to make sure the architecture still worked. All right. It's important that we get direction from you on one of the options because where we put the pump house is really paramount to your decision and city council's decision in the future. If you decide to go with option 1, which is just the infrastructure upgrades only, we're going to go ahead and assume that the buildings are going to remain in their current place. And we're just going to put the pump house and the equipment room kind of where it is now, which is behind this building here, right? If you choose the $31 million option, and we're going to assume that those two buildings are going to go away, and we're going to rebuild that building up in the corner, we're going to plan that ahead. And while phase one doesn't include the two new buildings, we're going to place that pump house up in that corner, anticipating the two new buildings to occur. So phase one is affected by which option you choose tonight, whether it's the infrastructure only or the $31 million complete redo. Yeah.
Sorry, if I may, a question about the pump house. If you put the pump house up in that corner, do you get any benefit from it being near all the heavy equipment that's going in right there at Portofino? There's new generators going in there. It's just off screen in
Yeah,
this image.
it's somewhere up here, right?
You know the work I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, are there heavy power lines there already? Is there already, some pumps or some plumbing?
I mean, we'd have to look into it, but yeah.
I wouldn't expect there to be, but if there's already a vault with heavy power there, maybe the pump can jump on that.
Right. Potentially.
To follow up on that question is what's the cost difference? So you've got phase one by itself where you put the equipment where you're talking about in the one corner, and you've got the whole package. And so when you start with the first phase, though, you would put the equipment in the location.
That future location.
A future location. And so my question is, what's the cost difference between the two? In short, if you go and say, okay, we want to ultimately do the whole package, and so let's put the pump package up where it will be permanently, is there an added cost to doing that?
Maybe Perry can help me out with that.
Good evening. I'm Perry Cardozo, Nubis Landscape Architects. I would say that when we were envisioning this as that alternative, is that we would size, and it's approximately 20 by 40 feet is a room size that we were estimating. We were thinking if it needed to go up in that upper corner area, let's not go through the expense of a block wall. Right now, I do believe it's in that corner, and it is a wood fence-ish around it, that we could go with inexpensive fence, maybe something like a vinyl fencing. The hope is that within maybe 5 years or so, the architect that's on our team behind me, Daniel Aziz, we would know where that is before time, where it would be absorbed into the architecture. So ultimately, it would be planned, but we wouldn't spend a lot of money hiding it and going through that expense for those first years till we can, gain the 30 million or whatnot.
So I'd suggest you change one word. It won't be years, it'll be decades.
Sure.
This is Redondo Beach.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just, truth hurts, but it'll be decades. So if it goes to the place where it would be for the whole enchilada, let's say, then I think it needs to be planned that it's going to be there by itself for quite a while before anything else gets done. And that was my concern about, does it cost more to put it there in the first place? Are we going to spend an extra $500,000 putting it there in phase one, or it's just an extra $50,000? I mean, to me, it makes a difference as to which choice you make.
Sure. I mean, we could look into that because, the budget for phase one is we've got about 800 grand left over. So there is a budget, hopefully, that, and that budget does include a 20% contingency already baked into it. So we do have 800 grand plus the contingency for unforeseen factors, right? So we do have a little bit of money to play with to screen it, but to your point though, how much is that gonna cost?
Yeah, I mean, I lean towards going ahead, and we have a lot of master plans in Redondo Beach collecting dust. There's one for Anderson Park, there's one for Franklin Park that there's been little or no action on in decades. I'm not saying that that's going to happen here. It seems like at least phase one is very doable financially and everything else. But with back Moonstone Park is a good example. We have money sitting there. We did a master plan, and how many years ago was that? So that's a good example of what can happen in Redondo Beach.
Sure.
That being said, if it doesn't cost much more to do that, and master plans are great because if you get funding, something comes along, you got something on the shelf ready to submit. I'm not against going down that road and having that master plan, but like I said, if it's going to cost a lot of money to do it in that future location, it's going to cost a lot of money now. What's a lot of money? I don't know, 50,000, 100,000 more. I'm not sure I'd be in favor of doing that. So
My gut is that it may even be less expensive because if we're close to Portofino, because this is now going to the sewer, before it was being pumped. So it makes sense where it is currently, but moving forward, it makes sense moving it closer towards Portofino because we also, not only for that, but we want to have access for crane and other maintenance pieces to remove some of those large, they're very large pieces of equipment.
Well, I'm glad I asked because that makes the decision easier.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next topic at hand is really circulated around the promenade itself. If you remember when the amenities plan was approved, it was approved with the idea that vehicle access to the hand launch would be preserved. I'll tell you what happens today of how people actually utilize the promenade is they'll take their car, kind of, if you look at my cursor, it's a little off screen here, but they kind of approach it from the parking lot here, drive their vehicle with a trailer perhaps, past California Surf Club, north towards the hand launch. They stop, they unload, and then they reverse out. Obviously, a reverse out situation is not great on a pedestrian promenade, right? So we've been really tasked with improving that. The amenities plan called for a one-way kind of loop where instead of coming from the California Surf Club side, it came from Portofino Way, and you made a left here to head west towards, in this alleyway that exists currently. It's about 12 or 13 foot wide between the old Joe's Crab Shack site and Seaside. And then you would turn heading south onto the pedestrian promenade portion, perhaps stop right around the hand launch, unload, and then continue south onto the marina parking lot. You can park your vehicle there. We've got some options that try to keep this closed loop system in place, but also improves the maneuverability for the vehicles themselves. You got to imagine these are probably trucks, long trailers, and of course, improve pedestrian safety. Having said that, the first option is actually eliminating vehicle access. And I'm starting here because it's the simplest one. We just say, yeah, I know the King Harbor Amenities Plan told us that we wanted to have vehicle access, but truly to create a 100% safe pedestrian environment, this is really the safest way to go. I will say the drawback, of course, is what we mentioned during the King Harbor Amenities Plan, which is anybody with potentially a heavy non-motorized vessel, like a kayak can be 500 pounds, would somehow have to get that kayak to the hand launch manually, right? And that's a strain. That said, this is the cheapest cost for the promenade. It's just over $465,000. 100% of that money would be put towards beautifying the space, landscaping, pavers, lighting, what have you, right? The next option keeps vehicle access intact. It utilizes that route that I just explained. It actually widens the mouth right here so that the turning radius is improved. That's shown in purple. It improves the turning radius here by shaving into the site a little bit and expanding out a little bit. It then keeps this pathway intact. It ranges between 15 and 18 feet in width and actually sets up some bollards that separates physically any pedestrian walking along the area from the vehicles themselves. You'll see a car could enter off of Portofino, come down this way, make that turn, and we've got some turning radius, maps that we've figured out what would be required to make that happen. And then you can see that we've taken if you've been out there, there is, let me go back to the picture actually. There's this area here that we're capitalizing on. And we're actually creating a pull-out area where a vehicle would very carefully cross this pedestrian area, stop right here, unload, and then come back in and continue out south. One of the designs we've included is actually utilizing the Joe's Crab Shack site. We've got kind of a shared experience here where pedestrians are separated with a bollard. This is probably too narrow to create bollards within the alleyway itself, just because it's already 12, 13 feet wide. If you narrowed that just for the vehicles, it would make it not really navigable. So what we're doing is utilizing the Joe's Crab Shack site, which is a higher elevation. It's actually a good, 5 or 6 feet higher. There's a retaining wall that separates the alleyway from Joe's Crab Shack. And what we realized was this drive aisle within Joe's Crab Shack is a two-way drive aisle that's 27 feet wide. Code only requires a 24-foot wide drive aisle. So simply restriping this row of parking, shifting it 3 feet towards the drive aisle, reducing it to what the minimum requirement is, frees up 3 feet where we could potentially put a little sidewalk in front of the cars up above the retaining wall. Problem with this is 3 feet doesn't meet ADA standards, which is 4 feet. So it could be utilized, but it wouldn't be compliant with minimum ADA requirements. Alternatively, we could eliminate this added pedestrian route right here and instead just refer pedestrians to continue along the promenade past the Joe's Crab Shack site, past the Portofino kind of rentable facility there, which is how the amenities plan calls out the promenade to direct. And they essentially curve around that Portofino building, and then there would be a crosswalk that would be installed to get to the sidewalk across the street. I think I have an image I'll show you guys in a bit. The third option improves that entryway, improves this corner right here, has the bollards, but instead of just utilizing this area for a drop-off area, it actually extends the promenade over the riprap, widens it to about 30 feet, which then provides for 2 lanes of one-way traffic. So you'd have a passing lane closest to the lagoon, a pullover lane to stop and unload your vehicle, and then an 8-foot wide protected zone where pedestrians could walk safely without cars interfering. And it would be kind of a prep area to put your kayak down before you drove off. This is the most expensive option, obviously, because we're building out quite a bit over the riprap. It's at $3.25 million. I do want to add one element to the option 2. Very similar cost. Instead of having a staging area where you have to traverse pedestrian traffic right here, we could eliminate this and actually put that pull-out drop-off area on the lagoon side. We would have to carve into the lagoon to provide a pull-out over there, but in doing so, you wouldn't require vehicles to interfere with the pedestrian area, right? And you might be asking yourself, well, Greg, we can't reduce the square footage of the lagoon. You told us that 20 minutes ago in the beginning of your presentation. We've gained that bulb out area from up here, and we could accommodate a slight carve out here and technically not reduce our overall square footage for the site. So it's an option. So you have option 1, which is really pedestrian only. You have option 2, which tries to improve the turning radius here and provides a drop-off area on the ocean side, or as an alternative on the seaside lagoon side. Or option 3, which is probably the most robust one, where you're actually widening the promenade to accommodate pass-through traffic and pedestrians.
And those folks are lifting their 500-pound boats over those bollards in that last one?
Yes. Okay. Bollards are about 36 inches tall. So
Not gonna happen.
it would be
Got it on their car in the first place, so.
true. Now I'll tell you, the subcommittee wrestled with this concept of which promenade should we choose. And ultimately, they actually landed on the pedestrian only. And I want to put an asterisk around that, because it's the cheapest, it's the safest, but they also saw potential in the new boat launch project. We've just entered into a contract last month to design a new boat launch. The subcommittee would support this version if there was an onus on creating a secondary option for heavier non-motorized vessels. So if you had a two-lane boat launch, potentially a wider third area that's like a beach entry where someone with a heavier vessel wouldn't necessarily have to navigate the pedestrian-only area. They could actually utilize the parking lot and get direct access to the boat launch. But that's where they landed, but it's up for discussion tonight. In addition to having an onus to design the boat launch to provide something, they also looked at the area of Mole C and D. The boat launch inherently is going to require boats to reverse past the promenade, which is, the situation we're trying to avoid as much as possible. But the inherent nature of a boat launch just simply requires that. Introducing vehicles the length of Seaside Lagoon essentially creates vehicle conflict points from here all the way down to here. And this portion of the promenade, the subcommittee was talking about this, could be potentially the most heavily used. It connects a hotel, a future waterfront education facility, hopefully a more utilized Seaside Lagoon, to some of our restaurants in the marina parking lot, as well as International Boardwalk. So if we could minimize the conflict zone to be in one area instead of this entire length, that was preferred. So what I'm asking of you tonight are these simple questions. Do you support the complete renovation for 31 million or simply fix the infrastructure for just under 7? If it's the complete renovation, do you support the idea to do it in a phased approach, given that we can't afford it all right now? Building placement, do you prefer option 1 or option 2? Option 2 would be utilizing that bulb out area a bit more, coming up with a better design, but pushing the building further to increase the open space area. And then which promenade design do you prefer? The pedestrian only, the cheaper 1.6 million where you have a drop-off area on the hand launch side or on the Seaside Lagoon side, or that big, robust, full lane, $3.25 million one?
Well, if I could ask Santa Claus, I'd say let's go for 31 million. But there is no Santa Claus. And, pardon me?
I'll say that publicly.
There is no Santa Claus available.
This time of year.
This time of year. I think to fix the infrastructure and get the show on the road would be the wisest move because we have the money. Waiting to find out when and if we're ever going to have the rest of the money is, I think, foolish. That's my personal opinion. Do what you can with what you got.
I will add that if you want to go the $31 million route and you're supportive of the phased approach, going through the entitlement phase, once entitlements are approved, there's usually a time limit placed on those entitlements that says, hey, you've got to have a building permit issued within 2 years, or you got to redo all these entitlements. Because we have the money for phase 1, we would immediately pull a building permit against those entitlements, thus cementing all 4 phases of the entitlement in perpetuity. So even if it took decades to get to phase 3, the entitlements would be there. And we wouldn't have to go back to Coastal Commission. We wouldn't have to go back.
But in decades, it's not going to be 31 million. It's
True.
going to be 61 million if
True.
inflation continues. So, looking at that nice 31 million number is nice now, but it won't be that in another decade.
You're right on that. Absolutely.
Can I ask you a few other questions?
Sure.
I guess real quick, let me just set the stage. I think it'd be good if we ask her questions and get some public input and then formulate our response to each of these 4 things. So go ahead.
So part of this discussion, I think, that would add, how much do we spend right now on testing annually on Seaside Lagoon?
You know, that's a good question. I'm not prepared to answer that, but it's not cheap, and we do get fined too.
And so I think those are two numbers that when this goes to the council would be good to have, because I remember when I was sitting on the council, Regional Water Quality Control Board tried to fine us in the neighborhood of $1 million. And the fines for every subsequent violation go up astronomically. It took us a number of months of negotiation to get that substantially reduced. And you alluded to it when you talked about when you take that water in, it's yours.
Right.
We were fined for suspended solids in the water that didn't come from us. It came from what we pulled in off the ocean. But because the harbor is considered an impaired body of water, it has much stricter standards for discharge than the ocean as a whole. And I say all this because I just think it's imperative that we move forward with the modernization, the renovation of Seaside Lagoon to a closed system. I just don't think we can afford to wait. And I think from a monetary point of view, it'll save money in the long term. And frankly, it's the only alternative. So to Commissioner Callahan's point is, yeah, I mean, the sooner we get started, the better. In that same vein, I remember it costs us about $500,000 a year to chlorinate and dechlorinate correct me if I'm wrong, the 2.3 million gallons a day of water that flows through Seaside Lagoon, if my number's correct. And so the cost of running it as is pretty astronomical. So I would also ask the question, what's the operating cost of the closed system? What's the projected cost? Can we see a savings, an operational savings? And what do we see? I mean, I'd be curious what the financials would be with it operating all year long. Right now, it's deeply in the red.
Right.
Fair to say?
Fair to say.
So I think it's important to look at what we are at now and what the rosy projections would be, what maybe projections would be with a renovated Seaside Lagoon. Ticket costs and whatever, and operating all year, because it might very well actually pay for itself, or the whole project wouldn't pay for itself, but at least you wouldn't have the ongoing annual negative operating costs. That makes sense?
Absolutely. You've got the fines that we're dealing with now, right? You have the testing that you're dealing with now.
In the hundreds of thousands of dollars per year.
Big body of water, but going to a closed loop system, it's fresh water. It's not free, right? It's going to cost a lot of money to fill that up. And then while it's drainable, who pays for the replacement of the water? Maybe that's baked into whatever special event, wants the facility drained. But we've got to find that out. Perry, can you comment on potentially operational costs once it's a closed loop system?
So Pace Engineering, who's one of our subconsultants, they did an analysis on that, and I'm going to be hesitant to give you that number. I want to say it's around $500,000 a year for operating costs.
So you're operating 12 months a year.
Correct.
We pay that now, operating 3 months a year or more.
Right.
So I will give that number to Greg tomorrow morning when in the office, because I know that they did an analysis both with whether it's chlorinated water or salt water and sand bottom versus non-sand bottom. So they looked at many different ways and what the implications would be for maintenance on that.
Yeah. Like I said, I think it's an important number to have when it's presented to City Council, because I do believe it'll probably end up being an annual budget savings. And then we can spend that money to fund the harbor patrol permanently.
There you go.
Well, that's a good point. I had two things at the top. It would be good to include, I think you included it here, everything in phase one that you would need to activate the area, that big area that you showed in the off season. So I think you said the fencing was included, and I don't know if there's anything else, but if that phase one includes the ability to activate that whole area in the off-season, I think that's really important for the goals of the
Yeah, so
amenities plan.
Do you want to take that?
From what I remember, and I don't see the slide in the presentation per se, can I, let me grab my.
Yeah, yeah.
This one, Greg, do you have this one? by any chance?
Maybe not.
So it's what the way that we lined this out was,
Is it this one? No.
no. Phase one, that 6 million plus almost 7 million, was just for the shell, for the lagoon, the equipment, and all the infrastructure to get this going. Phase two, so if you add phase one and two, gives you the lawn area, the barbecue pits, the restroom, all the hardscape that goes with it. And I believe that may have been about a 7 million.
7.6.
Yeah. So it would be, what I think you're talking about is combining 1 plus 2.
Yeah, I
if you
thought
want
phase
the
one
park.
said fence as well.
Well, it would
In your-
include that,
in the
it would include that like
report.
temporary fence that you could close off one side from the other, but it wouldn't include the permanent fence that goes around the whole site. The permanent fence around the whole site would be phase two. Some kind of upgrade to
Right.
what we have existing, right?
But if you have the fence, the temporary fence, that gets you the activation of that area off-season, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I don't know if that was it to activate that whole area, and we've got that all in phase one, but I would think that would be very important, given the goals and the amenities plan, to make this year-round, in at least part of the area, year-round use.
In phase one.
Yeah, it would be
Phase
able to, it would be able to bifurcate the water element from the expanded open space area because we shifted that pool over.
Yeah.
But because phase one doesn't include landscaping and ped paths and all that, it would just be kind of a beach. The existing sand, it would remain, but you could still bifurcate. it.
Playground, yeah.
Well, that's not in phase one though.
No, the existing one is there.
Oh, well, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so I think it would be important to state that as a goal of phase one, because it sounds like that gets you it, and that we should be explicit that you gain that. The second thing, I would almost put phase four before phase three, because, well, I say that not knowing what the life is left on the existing buildings, or the nuances of the shortcomings of the existing buildings to continue using them. But I know we made the one pretty looking, at least, several years back. Because we would still have the utility of the existing buildings, and then the constructing of the promenade, you would be doing that with other portions of the promenade in a more cohesive way, with consideration of the restroom in phase two. Like, it'd almost be ideal to do phase 2 and 4 together, going after that money.
Yeah, I think
Then do phase 3.
we were just trying to separate the lagoon portion from the promenade portion. I suppose you could do phase 4 at any point that you had the money. And to be honest, if you chose the $465,000 option, we've got $800,000 left in our budget. Perhaps we do it in phase 1 if construction goes as anticipated. But I really want to save that 800 grand for the what if, right?
Sure.
I did view that as extra money. So potentially what I was thinking was, if that 800 grand was truly indeed left over, maybe we tackle the perimeter fencing. But the promenade, if you chose the $460,000 option, would be on the table as well, if that were the scenario that played out.
Or the restroom in phase 2 even. Okay. And then just some nits in the report that I think would be important as we present this to the city council tomorrow, is that the word multi-generational wasn't mentioned anywhere, and I know that was a key part of the amenities plan to activate it year-round and have features that make it interesting and useful for multi-generational. And then this is real detail, but do we, in the, I guess it would be phase 3, I know there's like existing grills and sinks and prep areas. Is that all, that would still all be incorporated somehow for, okay. Yeah, it just wasn't explicit, so. Other questions? Let me start down here.
I got a couple. How long did it take us to get this 11 million?
Boy, to be honest, it was awarded before I even started here. Former Mayor Bill Brand was able to sequester the money from Senator Ben Allen, but we've had it for a few years.
The reason why I ask is because if we're looking to then get another 20, how long will it take us to get that?
I'll tell you, there's not a lot of grant opportunities for essentially a pool.
Sure.
So, I think we will be looking to the state to help us with this. It's originally state lands. It's an amenity that they built, that they wanted to be an introduction to the ocean. Probably why they gave us the 10 million to begin with, because they saw some active role there. But we'll be petitioning them, to be honest.
Well, phase 2 is a park, essentially, right? Not a pool.
Well, the whole thing.
I'm just saying, there's different grant monies for parks, right?
You gotta be careful.
Yeah.
Because if we call it a park and we try to seek funding for just that, we're technically decreasing the size of the lagoon, which is against Measure C. So we'd have to be really careful with our language there.
Okay.
I don't know if this is feasible, but we don't have much water in this state. So to be emptying it and filling it and emptying it and filling it seems to me somewhat wasteful. Is there a way we can incorporate some sort of water tank?
So we did look into that. We looked into, with the subcommittee, what it would take to preserve 100% of the water, 50% of the water, 20% of the water. The cost associated with putting some kind of underwater tank was a lot. It was excessive. Perry could probably get into the details better than I can on actual cost, but it kind of died on impact with the subcommittee because it was like, well, that's not really worthwhile.
So I know that there are fines that are attributed for excessive water use. Will we be hit with those?
I don't believe so, no. I mean, I believe we might get charged a higher rate for a higher user, but I don't think we would get fined for that.
Okay. And then in the extension of the promenade, where you were talking about having it go straight down rather than make that bend there, having it go straight past where Joe's Crab Shack is, I believe there are stairs there.
There are.
So we would have to then incorporate some sort of a ramp or something to get rid of those to make that ADA accessible. Is that included in this cost?
I believe what?
I want to say that was a consideration.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
And then additionally, people, if they enter this mouth up here, they're not entering through the current gated ticket system. How are they going to be paying?
So that system's actually going away.
Oh, it is, okay.
Yeah, so we're eliminating the shack that has the in-person payment, and we're installing automatic pay stations that you kind of see in other areas.
With the number on the ground and you pay it.
Something like that, right?
And then one more. Currently, are vehicles permitted? I know vehicles, I go down there all the time, I see cars on trucks unloading all their stuff down there. I have no problem with it. I understand the concern. Are they permitted to be there? I understand they're there, but are they permitted to be there currently?
I actually don't know. It's a roadway. It's a pathway. It's not a right of way or
But
anything.
The reason why I bring it up is because if we go and do the pedestrian only, what's to then stop somebody from doing what they're currently doing?
You mean what would prohibit someone from actually
Backing
doing
in
it?
there, yeah.
I mean, probably just signage, stuff like that, We could put bollards in there, yeah.
Bollards stop them.
Like a line of bollards here, here-ish.
That's all I have.
Okay, so a couple of different questions. First thing, the amenities plan, I believe it specified that there would be a beach entry to the hand launch ramp, but this all continues to show docks remaining. So is it going to have, if you were to pick the bump out on the west side plan, isn't that going to become the beach entry? If you get the satellite kind of picture.
Yeah, I guess let me try to help answer. That wasn't part of that whole hand launch isn't part of the consultant's scope. So
Right.
those drawings aren't reflective of.
They aren't reflective of what may happen there eventually.
And I will say, the beach entry isn't truly a beach entry all the way into the water with the amenities plan. There's a retaining wall that separates the water from the beach. It's really meant in the amenities plan, because it hasn't been designed yet, was meant for a staging area so that people could get their vessel situated before carrying it down the rest of the way, right?
Okay, so there would still end up being some sort of dock there.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And the second thing is, I know that the subcommittee ended up kind of leaning toward the pedestrian-only promenade with the idea that the hand launch ramp, as you mentioned, could perhaps be incorporated into the boat launch ramp. But since then, I've heard that Measure C requires those to be separated.
It does, yeah. So we wouldn't be able to get rid of one or the other. It would just be in addition to.
I see. So you would still have this one for anybody that wanted to carry their stuff from the parking lot,
Right.
but you would also have another alternative where they could get to it with heavier. Okay, thank you. And then, let's see. So we talked a little bit momentarily, somebody mentioned maybe switching the order. Could you go back to the
phasing?
Yep, the phasing. And that maybe, maybe it made sense to kind of switch them around and do phase 3 with the new buildings last. But has there been any economic consideration of what the rental of those buildings for weddings and events might bring into the city in terms of income that would then help pay for phase 4? Or is that not a consideration?
No, we haven't done that.
Okay. That's it.
It's
Thank
not
you.
a bad idea, but we haven't done it.
We had a hard time making a buck out of the old main library, and that whose catering company was that we had the exclusive contract with that.
Forgot.
In
yeah.
short, we've kind of managed venues for weddings and whatnot before. That's an example. Not sure it was a real money grabber. Real quick, recycled water. Can recycled water be used to fill that thing?
No.
It's like, why, if you can purify ocean water to swim in, why can't you purify recycled water to swim in?
I don't know.
I mean,
I will bring that up with the consultant, but at first take, I've never heard of that. But we can certainly ask the question.
I'd ask the question because I can't see how you can purify ocean water to county health standards and not be able to purify, chlorinate, whatever you need to do to recycle water. You're not drinking it. Well, my kids would drink it, but they drink the ocean water too. So anyway, I think it's a question to ask because it goes to the whole idea of conserving water.
Yeah.
So I also find it, I don't know, hypocritical that we sit there and we worry about ocean sea level rise, and we've got this ideas and plans, and we all attribute it to global warming and CO2 production, then we're going to put in fire pits? I don't know. Just don't think fire pits are kind of, in my opinion, kind of caveman, and we shouldn't be putting fire pits in. I understand there's still this great, humans have a hard time divorcing themselves from warm, cozy fires, but to me, they go back to the Stone Age.
We're following the amenities plan in that aspect.
I hear you. I'm just putting my vote in now, no fire pits. The Maestro statue, I presume it's going to
That's-
find a home somewhere. Appropriate.
Of course, yeah.
Well, I just didn't see it, so.
Okay.
Just saying, want to make sure it's got a home and it doesn't end up being melted down for scrap metal or something. For fire pits, exactly. And I would, I agree with the idea that phase 4 should be moved forward, especially with the idea that it's a pedestrian only. You go the pedestrian only route, you move that forward, doesn't cost you a bloody fortune, and you can do it in with everything else being done in phase 1. That's it.
I guess, let me tackle on the recycled water. Did we talk to the West Basin Municipal Water District and all of their recycling efforts?
Not on this. We are for irrigation, but not for the lagoon itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Probably worth the conversation.
No problem. And just really quick on the fire pits. What our vision was is not wood burning, not charcoal burning. These would be fire pits that would be on a timer, that could be controlled, and it would burn clean fuel. There's a corn-based piece. So if you go to like, I know this is not a resort by any means, but the technology is there to have the protection, to have the clean sort of feeling of fire, but it's not producing emissions. That's the idea.
Well, if you're burning fuel, it's still putting out CO2.
Unless you're burning hydrogen or something.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
But hydrogen flames are invisible, so it's not
Yeah,
going to
that'd be a bit of a problem. I get
So, you're not worried about smoke, you're talking about CO2.
CO2, yeah.
And so burning any kind of fossil fuel just seems like, why are we doing that?
The Maestro statue is one of my questions. That's been answered. My thing is the promenade. Not having vehicle access to the boat launch, I think, is a real mistake. It's going to really prohibit a lot of usage of that hand launch for people. I mean, I'm getting older. I can't carry a kayak anymore. And by the time you get it off your car, your trailer, you get it on little wheels so that you can drag. And then what do you do with the wheels? There's no place to lock them up or store them. They disappear in 5 minutes. If you really truly want to have it so that all ages can use it, you need vehicle access. And I think a one-way is the way to do it. I'm still astounded when I travel all over the world that we're the only country in the world that has to separate our pedestrians from our vehicles. I mean, we're the only ones so stupid that we can't stay out of the way of
We're the
vehicles.
most litigious.
Huh?
We're the most litigious.
Well, that's true, but we're also stupid. I mean,
That's why we're litigious.
people walk across train tracks knowing that it's a right of tonnage and they're not going to win. So I think having a pedestrian only is a real bad choice. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I would agree with that as well. I mean, it's kind of in a bad location in a way, right?
It's been done for so long,
Yeah.
Everybody's used to it. I think having a one-way would be a great idea. I don't know if the bollards are really necessary.
We could also do color patterns on the floor,
Exactly, just like the bike paths on the street.
Okay, a couple things. Since it sounded like one of our biggest issues was getting rid of the water when we drain it, and I'm gonna talk about the sewer here in a minute, but could you use ocean water to fill it? Is that a possibility of any way to?
That's what we're trying to avoid right now because there's contaminants in the ocean water that we're now being responsible for because we're taking the ocean water.
But I
In
thought
the
it was
return.
we're only responsible for when we put it back into the harbor, right? Could you put it, I mean, there's people, I'm already swimming into the ocean. I mean, you could take the water, we now have salt, and if you have to chlorinate it, we chlorinate it. Would that be a possibility?
That came up with our sub-consultant team, and that was not a possibility from what we were told. That it needed to be potable water and then treated, and then once that discharge would go to the sewer. And the piece, that we're talking about draining may take up to 3 weeks to a month because you can only discharge so much a week, a day. And so it'd be a long process to discharge that for a beach life or some other event. So there's some issues on both sides. On the discharge side, really, it's really more cost to refill, but
Yeah, it just seems like since we do allow kids to swim in the ocean, or we're, that's legal now, I don't see why we're now moving ocean water and allowing them to swim. It sounded like the issue was the discharge of that. I can understand that too. I can understand why we have regulations as far as what we discharge into the harbor.
sure, and it may be some corrosive properties. I'd have to, again, talk to, I'm not the expert on this, our
Right.
sub-consultant is, but having potable come in, treated, and the salt put in, and then into the lagoon.
And then
versus
into the
having
sewer.
Yeah, well, no, well, treated and then going into the lagoon and then ultimately pumped out to the sewer. But I think the idea was that could be able to have a controlled potable water quality coming in, treat it in the pump room with your additives, salt, chlorine, whatever they need to do to put that water, have that transfer into the lagoon, but never mix the two, either pulling it in as a cheap possible source of water. I'm not sure what that would do to the equipment costs and treatment, but from what I understand, it's not a possibility, whether it's the environmental aspect of it. But I will confer with our consultant and get back to Greg on that. But early on, we've been on this for a little over a year. I want to say that was brainstormed and it was denied as a possibility.
It seems interesting though, because it is trying to, we're creating an introduction to the ocean. That's the point of this, and what better way to have an introduction to the ocean, have it be actual ocean water. But no, that leads me to the second question, which has to do with the sewer. Where is the actual connection to the sewer? I mean, that seems to be a huge piece to this, right? You're now going to be draining a boatload of water into the sewer.
Right.
Where's that connection? It's over by the Portofino?
I want to say it's over at Portofino. And Greg, I'm not sure if that has been defined. I think that we do have some record drawings. I can't recall exactly where that is, but I want to say that it's there. We have, the Crab Shack tying into a trunk line. We have all the restaurants around the parking lot tying into a trunk line. So it's there. I just couldn't tell you exactly where we can tie in, but ultimately we can tie in at any point where we put that equipment, as long as, the grades work.
The pump is where the new pump vault is right next to Seaside Lagoon.
Yeah, it's right.
Yeah, we
Well,
just.
it's like,
We just
it's off
approved
screen,
it.
but it's over here somewhere, yeah.
Oh, I see.
We just approved it.
Kind of a little higher than I can go there. Yeah,
Okay.
Pump station.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I personally, I mean, the pedestrian only makes sense, but to your point that it's going to be not used that much once we do that right there, it's going to one, but maybe that's fine. And I'm also anti-fire pit if I'm going to be, I think that makes sense as well.
Okay. That was in the amenities plan, but okay.
All right, Nick, that's all for me.
I'll defend the fire pits for a second. We're trying to get winter activity down there.
That's true.
And, one little fire pit compared to everything else we're doing, compared to every damn 5-gallon propane bottle we used during COVID, go count the 5-gallon propane bottles down in the village. All right, enough fire pit stuff. So I'm really in favor of using the turnout area, just using all the space we have and not having little orphan corners. One of the things we talked about in this, one of the things we discovered in this, is that there's a little parkette at the corner of Portofino Way and Harbor Drive called Founder's Circle. I think it was you, Leslie, that discovered that these little forgotten circles, and I'd hate to have that little turnout turn into one more little forgotten circle if we can use it. So I'm in favor of the phased approach. I'm in favor of spending the full amount It may take years to get it, but it'll last years and years and years. You know, we're not going to rebuild Seaside Lagoon again for a long, long time. I'm also, I'm kind of torn on what to do with the promenade. You know, I'm one of the people who was in the amenities plan and said, we got to have cars dropping stuff off. We can't have carts. We can't have other solutions. We got to have cars going all the way through. And I was really hoping we could have a turnaround and then use the rest of that road area, including the alley, and recover all that square footage into Seaside Lagoon. Basically, you can't. You still need some access there. You still need the promenade there. And a turnaround to do everything we would need, trailers, fire trucks, everything, is a huge bite. So you end up with the drive-through section. And looking at that and thinking about that, I said, well, okay, now I'm kind of in favor of the simple, let's make it pretty, the simple walking only. And I still go back and forth to myself if that's the right idea. I had to carry a stand-up paddleboard around today, and I didn't enjoy it. So I kind of think about three potential users of the hand launch. There are people with very light devices who won't mind carrying them, you know, a quarter mile or whatever it turns out to be. Great, good for them. There's the kayak fishermen with the 500-pound kayaks, and you know, those guys find the harbor they like, find the place they like to fish, and modify their whole gear and their whole lives to make it work. And they'll figure out a way to do this with carts or using the boat launch or whatever. Obviously, they're going to drive as close as possible to the water. I think once we have a boat launch, they're going to figure out a way to use that. So I sort of worry about the medium people, the people like me who, you know, have something they'd rather not carry that far, but could. You know, if I were to drive down there, I look at these roads, I look at the signage, I look at how it might get used, and I try to figure out, you know, where would I go? Would I, you know, if the boat ramp weren't busy, would I just end up taking my paddleboard there and launching it there instead of driving through all this stuff? So what I've kind of thought of as part of the phased approach and where phase 4 fits in is, let's do it after the boat ramp. Let's leave the promenade the way it is, kind of ugly, until after the boat ramp. The boat ramp's likely to come in sooner anyway. And if we see how well the boat ramp can accommodate some form of paddlecraft and hand launching, maybe that'll help answer this question. And then when we see how people are using the boat ramp and the hand launch, see where traffic goes. And we, you know, I really like separating the paddlecraft and the lightweight stuff from the, you know, guys with the cases of beer in the speedboats. Speaking as a member of both communities. So as we go through the boat ramp design and even some boat ramp usage, we may have a better answer on how to do the hand launch and the drop off. My question is, can you put up the one where there's a turnout that goes into there's one design where you mentioned we could potentially take a bite of Seaside Lagoon for a turnout?
It's essentially this design.
Yes.
But instead of having it here, we would carve in. I don't have it here with me, but it looks exactly like this, except we've got a little carve out on the Seaside Lagoon side. Yeah.
So I've used that area. I've backed trailers in and out. I've managed to turn around even with a small trailer with the little cutout we have now. Hardly even tapped that little outhouse. There was no damage at all. If we decided down the road that this needed to be pedestrian only, or if we decided down the road that this needed to have cars in it, and we had already done some design work with the lagoon, and if we decided we wanted that turnout to go into Seaside Lagoon, would we have had to reinforce that area at all? You know, do you need to, would we need to make the decision today if we wanted a bite of Seaside Lagoon for cars to turn around.
Yes, with the caveat that anything can be changed, you just have to go through the entitlement process again.
And I'd rather not.
Right.
So if we decide today that we're not sure about the promenade, as long as the promenade doesn't take a bite of Seaside Lagoon, could we do the entitlements?
You
Or
could
are we
es-
messing that up?
You could essentially, remove the promenade from this process, knowing that we would have to come back and do this thing just for the promenade itself, but we would have a better idea of what the boat launch looked like, how people actually used both areas, the popularity of Seaside Lagoon at that point, right? You'd have a little bit more information on your hands, but it wouldn't change the fact that we'd have to go through the entitlement process for the promenade itself.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
So really, the only fixed amenity in that area is the double-sided restroom. So if we plan for where that bump out would be, locate the restroom, plenty of room from that, and fence it off like it would be now. And then once that time comes, if we just change the configuration of that fence, so it's just a fence modification, keep the hardscape how it is now and maybe incorporate that into the promenade side so it doesn't look like an afterthought. It would look like part of it. Then you're just maybe, relocating that fence, and that fence can be doweled into that existing concrete. Maybe we predetermine where those footings are. So at some day there's sleeves and they can put those posts in and make a simple modification that way. So it's just a fence.
Modification more than anything else.
The restroom.
You
which
must have
is-
shifted the restroom closer to California Surf Club in that design.
We would have done something, yeah.
We could, I mean,
No, I mean, you had a
there's-
drawing of it, right?
Yeah,
Was it
there is
just
a
shifted?
shaded square of it
It's-
there.
It's right as the walkway loops into that half circle. It's right around where that red dot is. It's kind of, oh no, to the right, your rectangle, right? Keep going, right
this.
there. It's right there.
Yeah.
So, but there's no magic point. We wanted to keep it on access to that concrete walk that intersects the boardwalk. But yeah, there's no,
We can certainly
we can
shift
shift
it.
that.
Yeah.
We can make that work.
Yeah, I just didn't have a visual of how long that bump out was. Does that require you to shift the bathroom from where you have it shown right now?
But it sounds like it's a good option though, because then it lets you have potentially have an option.
What I'm kind of hearing is, design the restroom in a manner that would accommodate a turnaround area or a pull-out area if we decided to go that route at phase 4 or phase 3, however you wanted to order it.
Right.
We could do that.
Yeah. I think it's a good idea.
So, take everything I just said and turn that into a motion. I would like, and I know we do that after more discussion, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I hate kicking the can down the road, but I would kind of like to see how we use this before.
Well, it's almost like, it sounds like you're favoring option 2, which is the one-way, the improved turning radius, having some sort of a drop-off area, whether it be on the ocean side or on the Seaside Lagoon side. But whatever we do, make sure that the Seaside Lagoon is designed to accommodate one on that side if we decide to go that route.
And I even wonder if we'll need the turnout for cars, because if we discover that the boat ramp eliminates trailers and eliminates really slow drop-offs with really complicated equipment, and the drop-off just becomes, a stand-up paddleboard and a paddle,
Right,
then we know a little bit more than we do today.
right.
And the drop-off is really just punting it down a little bit anyways, because if this becomes popular, there is a finite amount of space in that drop-off. So now the car behind it isn't going to wait for the drop-off to clear. It's going to unload in that road anyway. So all we've done is delayed the unloading of car 1 or car 2 It just may have to make a decision of, do I want to wait for this person to unload their kayak, or am I just going to do mine right here? So it might just be,
Nature, yeah.
it might just be, I
Yeah.
don't know if the,
That's the
I don't know if
human
the
nature
turnouts are
of it.
that important. Currently, there's no turnouts, and people seem to be doing just fine with the system. I don't know if a turnout is necessarily needed. Because it's not going to solve the problem. It's just going to delay the problem.
Yeah. That's a good point. Going to open it to public
Yeah, that's all I
comments?
had. If it's,
Okay, any other comments before we open to the public? Okay, I'd like to open for public comment, item L2.
Good evening, Commissioner and staff. Mark Hanson, King Harbor boater and proud member of the Harbor Amenities Working Group. It's wonderful that we're making this progress in here this evening. I think I want to start out by just saying maybe my favorite thing that's grown out of the subcommittee meetings is the idea of the year-round lap swimming. I think that was just a brilliant thing. I was really against putting a giant Olympic pool in our harbor, but I think that one is spot on with those buoys. I think there was some discussion earlier, but I wanted to point out that the admin report kind of argued with itself about saltwater versus freshwater. In one place it says staff has designed this to create a new saltwater feature, and then later on it says it's going to be freshwater. So we probably just want to clear up our future admin reports. You guys already touched on Measure C says that we have to have safe paddlecraft distance from the boat ramp, so I'm glad that came up. When we talk about this whole issue of the promenade and launching the paddlecraft, one of the things I want to suggest is we outreach to the paddle communities. You know, we know guys like Jeremy Godokus in the paddle shop. I have a whole list of them I keep up to date. So probably great just to outreach to those guys, get some expertise. They're the ones who do it. They might have some great input for us. I want to, one of the loose ends that I still feel from the King Harbor Boaters Advisory Panel I served on was, and I'll reference back to the King Harbor Boaters Advisory document. On page 132, it says that the pool can support coastal dependent activities such as scuba diving lessons, radio-controlled sailboats, and goes on to mention that surf wave pools are also sought after by the public. Those caught my eye at the time because they were coastal related. We're training people to go use the real live ocean. I was impressed by the thought that surfers in wetsuits could use that amenity year round. I really like that, just like the lap swimming pool. And I'll tell you that interestingly, during the pop-ups and the community meeting, the community was not interested in grass versus sand, architectural buildings, terms like rentable space, configurable space. But I made a little flyer that I provided to you guys where I showed 4 pictures of surf waves, waves for kids, scuba lessons, model sailboats. Oh my gosh, I got all kinds of enthusiasm there. People want to know what they can do with their kids. So my big recommendation for tonight is that we endeavor to give fair consideration to those potential features by researching the available equipment and reaching out to the various surf clubs in our area for their expertise and level of interest. Can I steal about 15 seconds from you?
Motion to extend.
Second.
In that direction, I've done some quick research, and of course I found the head of the surfboard riders, 4 surf shops, 8 people giving surf lessons. So they're out there for us to talk to. So I think, you know, talking to these guys would be good. Let's see if they turn their nose up and say, no, I want to be in cold water off of El Porto, or I would ever use this. I think the hotels would love it. They're really small, the standing surf waves. They're only 30 feet wide, and you can make them bigger. I think that's it. I say let's reach out to the paddleboard community, and let's reach out to that surf community and tie up that loose end, whether because I don't know, I'm not a surfer, find out whether or not the idea of a surf training pool or a little kiddie wave pool, are either of these good ideas? Because as I sit here right now, for all my
Thanks.
involvement, I'm actually not sure yet myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other comments?
Hello, Commissioners, Jim Light, District 1. I remind you, all of this is in the Coastal Commission retained jurisdiction. So, you know, what you approve should be for the long term, because you don't want to have to go back for every change all the way back to the Coastal Commission because of the time and money involved in that. As to the promenade, you know, as we said, Measure C requires the hand launch to be a safe distance from the boat launch. If you would advocate co-locating the boat launch with the hand launch, that ignores a lot of the history of just what I've been through the last 20 years of what do we do with a boat ramp here in the harbor, and especially during the Center Cal debate. I mean, even putting a boat launch at Mole C with a separate hand launch was a lot of concern to the public, and they were talking about additional break walls just to separate the traffic. When asked, out of the amenities plan, when they polled, when asked to rank specific improvements for the hand launch, a zero depth entry was the highest, or was ranked highest, followed by vehicular access. And that goes along with hand launch design guidelines. If you read them from around the nation, it recommends vehicle drop off if parking is not directly adjacent to the ramp. And they all specify more distance equals less use. So if you want to design it not to be used, don't let cars go by it. So I ask you to reconsider on that. This, and if you do co-locate it with the boat ramp, this is a condensed harbor. So it's going to concentrate boat traffic there with a bunch of people who don't do it regularly, and you're going to put them right next to people paddling. I just think that's a recipe for disaster. Less able people, as you already mentioned, will be turned off by the distance or having to launch next to boats with motors. And so we're kind of going against what the users would want. And remember, that's what the Coastal Commission is going to consider. How do we serve the most people? And access is their priority. The traffic co-located with the pedestrians, that's been that way since the 60s. There's never been a reported accident between pedestrians and vehicles down there. And it was designed to drive on. There's a bollard at the end of it, so it was designed to be driven on. I have no idea why they closed it off. And I'm going to ask you for an extra couple minutes, if you don't mind.
Motion to extend.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. There's ample room right along the water for both. It's around 18 feet wide. And Harbor Drive, the lanes coming down Harbor Drive are only 11 feet wide. So people are getting down to the harbor on an 11-foot wide lane. I think sharing a pedestrian path with some bollards with the cars driving down it, there's ample room for both. The boat ramp contractors who bid on the design both stated they anticipate that the demand for the boat ramp will be large, that there's a large pent-up demand. So this should be a busy boat ramp if we design it right. So I would advocate no hand launch at the boat ramp due to liability and being able to drive to the hand launch boat ramp. On the Seaside Lagoon, Measure C states the size of the park shall be expanded. So I recommend maximum use of that turnaround that we're cannibalizing into the park. Those buildings are not going to last forever. I sent Greg some pictures. I don't know if you can project them, but I don't have time to go through that. But they're already rotting away at the base. And if you go to the lanai is not used very much because it's just not configured. It's not a pleasant place. It's a bunch of concrete and there may be some events that go there, but during general use, it's not a high use item. So I think you should plan on those buildings not being used forever. And I think we should look at replacement, not just, putting paint and fixing it. Not planning for new buildings will be a big letdown publicly, as we've advertised this for years with new buildings. Bill Brand always thought this was a $30 million project from the very start. So I don't think when he got that 11 million, he thought that's the end of the money raising. And we can do more, we can do lease revenue bonds. There's other means to finance things like this. So I recommend a simple one-lane drive-in, and I recommend that you approve the full build-out design with the phased approach. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment?
No Zoom participants and no e-comments.
Okay. Greg, can you go back to the 4 questions slide?
Yeah. Mio, can you light me up? Thank you.
Actually, let me ask or kind of bring to light one thing that I don't think you stated. Absorbing that bump out, we did talk about where do people drop off and their other
Yeah, that's
locations.
actually a really good point. I didn't touch on that because that area actually does, it's the quasi drop-off area, right? With us eliminating that portion, there's an existing drive aisle just to the top of this picture here that we don't actually utilize right now. It's shut down. It's not accessible to vehicles. But when we eliminate that pay station and make it all electronic, we're opening up that gateway too. And that's actually incorporated into the concept here where people could just pull in via that driveway or the other driveway too. They could go either way. And people would just simply use the parking lot to drop people off. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Thanks. Okay, let's see, I just want to capture a couple things that we hit on that we wanted to state as we vote on these. That a key goal of phase 1 would be to activate the off-season area, multi-generational, retain a home for the Maestro Brothers statues. Were there other key things that I missed in that short list?
No, I don't think so.
Is our discussion of this over then, we're just gonna go to votes?
No, we're gonna talk more.
Okay, 'cause I got questions.
I'm just trying to think how to
Just trying to summarize it a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's other stuff you could list, but it's kind of built into what we have to do. Like, obviously it's a priority that we've got to, make the pool work with the power plant going away and all the other kind of
Right.
fundamental requirements that are built into doing this at all. I don't think you need to list those though.
Yeah. I think when you did the amenities plan, we kind of did like a quick straw vote on the different things and we put it all together.
I was going to recommend the same thing, yeah.
Okay, so let's do that. So question 1 is complete reno or simply fix. So that's the
That's essentially the
option.
$31 million option versus the just under $7 million option. The difference being, if you choose the $7 million option, we stop there.
Yeah.
So just a show of hands, who would want to do the complete reno option?
The issue is the cost. I mean,
Yes.
I don't think anybody is like, no, let's not have this beautiful thing. Let's just stop at the $7 million. We all want the ultimate $31 million. We can't afford that. So what happens over the next 10 years or 20 years while we're getting to that point?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter, right? Because
my only issue is that we put in there that it will not be a bond issue. We're being bonded to death. Lease revenue? That would work.
yeah, but I think it makes sense to do the complete renovation because the phase 1 essentially is the fix the infrastructure part, and we're just setting a goal essentially. I think, and I think it's doable.
Yeah,
It's fixed infrastructure without the buildings.
That's right.
my point is, I said before, we have quite a few master plans sitting on shelves, but the one thing is if you have a master plan sitting on a shelf and a grant opportunity comes along, now you've got something that you can move forward with and take advantage of that opportunity.
Absolutely.
So although I'm not terribly optimistic, and I'll throw something else out there, I'm not really interested in City of Redondo Beach, building sites for wedding receptions. So to me, Seaside Lagoon and whatever buildings are done there need to be tailored specifically for the harbor. So we talked about harbor education and whatnot. I don't really, not interested in building things that are focused on things that are not harbor dependent, to use a favorite term. That, like I said, we had, was this, no, Spectrum Catering, whoever the catering was at the old main library. You know, we got a few dollars off of it, but that was it. And if you actually tried to rent the place out, it was incredibly expensive. And I don't think it really served the community very well. And I just don't see doing that. I don't think it's the city of Redondo Beach's obligation to the community or something for the community to do that. So I'm really kind of against that whole idea. That's what we have Portofino for and Crown Plaza. Well, it's not Crown Plaza anymore. It's what the hotels are for. Let them do it. We don't need to be going into that business. But the rest of it, I'm all for going for the master plan and moving forward with phase 1, modifying it as needed to work in parts of phase 4.
My wife just threw something at the TV. We got married at Seaside Lagoon.
As is, though.
As was.
Okay, even better, as was. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with spending, $14 million to build a reception hall for it.
Just injecting some humor.
Yeah. No, it's not. It's a nice option. I mean, if somebody does want to rent it, it seems like it's still a nice option to have for the city as a revenue generator.
Sure.
Well, for community organizations too, right? RBF or some other.
But I don't think we need to spend $14 million to do that.
Right.
I don't think we need to build a purposeful room for holding those kind of receptions.
So I probably didn't help. Did we get a clear straw vote on this first one, or did it get commingled with phased approach?
Oh, it stopped with me. Like I said, I'm not opposed to the 31 million as long as we can move forward with the infrastructure that we need so desperately and have the funds for. So I would say begin with phase 1, let's get it going, approve all the phases and look for money for it, as long as it's not a bond. So that's my thing. I think everybody's agreed, huh?
I think so.
So maybe the comment though is, do you want us, I guess you're suggesting we put a statement to city council that we wouldn't want a bond issue?
Yeah. And I'm against that. I mean, I just think just have flexibility. I'm personally anti-bond measure as well, but if just have flexibility though, why write stuff like that in, That's my take. I would like to say though that I didn't, I still haven't heard since we're all able to swim in ocean water now. I mean, because it's going to be really expensive as far as refilling this thing back up, that we should have a really hard reason why we can't use ocean water here, since that's what this is. I mean, absolutely not a bunch of feelings on it, but an absolute, because it doesn't make any sense to me at all why you wouldn't.
Just to interject a little bit, I think you guys are thinking about the general obligation bonds that are technically on the ballot this upcoming ballot season. There's other kind of bond measures that can be done. And to Commissioner Bauer's point, you don't want to paint yourself in a corner when you're looking for money, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Any other comments, questions on the bond topic?
I wouldn't want to tie the city council's hands.
Right.
Yeah, I'm with Tom.
And there's bonds for stuff I don't use. This is something I would use, so I wouldn't oppose a bond on this.
So I heard complete renovation, yes. Phased approach, yes. You guys want to chime in on building placement? I think.
Which building?
I think
The pump station building?
No, the 2 new buildings towards the entrance, towards the
We
bulb out.
push it into the bulb out. Yeah, I'm for that.
So here's your option. You've got one that's kind of more centrally located, doesn't quite utilize all of the space that we captured with the bulb out. It uses it as like a staging area. And you have this one, which pushes the buildings into the bulb out, thus increasing the open space area, the usable space within the lagoon itself.
So I think all those frankly are going to come back and when the money is available to actually do them. So I don't think that whatever is decided by us tonight or by city council will be the last discussion on it, because if money comes available to build any of those buildings, it'll end up coming. The other point is, it's really hard to tell looking at this because I don't have an elevation per se. I don't know. I'm curious how it's going to look from the front, blocking views. There's talk about Harbor Drive. I can't really intelligently make a decision on a building location perspective based on this.
It's more conceptually, do you support a staging area or do you support more usable space in the lagoon? And when this comes back through the entitlement process, all those details will be shown to you.
Okay, so to that point,
Yeah.
more space in the lagoon.
Right, and also that it gives you the option of having a bigger turnaround area or a bigger staging area. It's pushing a little bit into the lagoon for that option. Do you know what I'm saying? As far as making the hand launch drivable and a place to, for somebody to, a little more room for dropping stuff off there on that side. You know what I'm getting at?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way the buildings are drawn, I'm having, just looks odd right here because you can't see what's going on. But if the question is staging area or more space in the lagoon, I would vote for more space in the lagoon.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, I've used that little turnout area and I only want to go to I'm going to change what I said earlier. I only want to go to the Coastal Commission once. And if you make me have to pick something today, I will pick something where we're able to drop off at the hand launch. And I don't like having cars cross pedestrian bollards. I drive on Harbor Drive every day, and negotiating across that bike path drives me nuts. And when I've used this, and I haven't used it this year, I admit, I've always been able to navigate through there. You don't need, 200 feet of turnout lane. As long as there's a little section of the turnout that's there where two cars can get past each other.
Are you talking about the promenade design right now?
I'm talking about the promenade design right now.
Okay.
And do we have to, well, I'm talking about the promenade design right now because I'm talking about taking a bite out of Seaside Lagoon.
Gotcha.
And I'm suggesting that when we get to the promenade design, we'll be able to negotiate a small area where two cars can get past each other without taking a bite out of Seaside Lagoon. So I'm in favor of maximizing the size of Seaside Lagoon.
Okay, gotcha.
Sorry, unclear answer.
I think everyone's saying yes to that. Take
Okay.
more to the lagoon.
Yeah.
And then really the next one is the pedestrian promenade options. Sounds like we're all leaning towards phase 2, but you guys do the straw
Option
poll.
2?
Right. Option 2, yeah.
I am.
After hearing from them, I can go along with option 2. From a cost perspective, option 3 just seems way too much money and yeah.
And this gets the job done.
Yeah.
So do we have a
I think
consensus?
I've been on the fence as well. The idea of a true promenade, when you showed that picture of let's keep this whole thing pedestrian, just has a way different vibe than cars right in front of the lagoon. I like what you came up with, Roger, about this is a phased approach. If it's phase 4, let's put in the hooks that we could do 1 or 2 or 2B. And then see what comes of the boat ramp and, is it just the trailerable large kayaks and boats that we can accommodate safely with the boat ramp, something adjacent, and then you're just talking about heavy kayaks just regular things that you just don't feel like calling, like maybe we learn something.
What about handicap access?
It's a real thing.
Yeah, because if you cut off vehicle access, then people who are handicapped will not be able to use it.
And I will say, when we were doing the amenities plan and we were speaking to the hand launch, one of the big amenities was going to be ADA accessible.
So I guess I'm in favor of
That's okay.
giving us that flexibility, however that looks today, to move forward.
You have
So for the ADA accessibility, it's not ADA accessible now, but people can get to it with vehicles. But people would continue to be able to get to it with vehicles until we got to phase 4 anyway. Okay.
Yeah. Kicking the can down the road, but doing it in the
Well,
smartest way.
kicking the can down the road until there's money.
Yeah, and doing it in the smartest way for the entitlement process, I
Right.
guess.
Yeah.
Could we add to the recommendation that alternative sources of water be considered or be investigated for filling the lagoon? And leave it at that?
Yeah, something to look at.
In the subcommittee, we had discussed, I can't remember what it was. We had discussed the cost of filling this. And then I was coming up with all kinds of crazy schemes for storing the water, like renting a barge that's a tank. And renting that barge for one day was more than buying more water.
Sure.
There's all kinds of crazy plumbing there right now. There's huge pipes that move water out of several places in the ocean. I'm probably the only one here that's seen them. And there's a lot of crazy plumbing there now. We could end up storing water in a tank on the AES site, which we don't own yet, or in a saltwater pond there, or some other place. There may be some future answer. But I don't remember what it was. All of my crazy schemes just looked ridiculous once we found out the price of a swimming pool of water.
Yeah.
It wasn't that bad.
I got a feeling that part of the problem with using ocean water may end up being permits to pull water out of the ocean, because Lord knows, I'm sure that that's not something you can just go do. But I just wanted to put something in there that to investigate and leave it as bland as that.
Yeah, that we just investigate it, because we are trying to create a simulated ocean environment in a way right here. And so we're basically taking potable water and trying to make it look like ocean water when it's right next to ocean water. I mean, it just seems silly to me that we can't use, but I don't know, there must be some weird regulation, but it should be nailed down that we know what that regulation is that stops you.
Our memory's just not serving us correctly. It was a while ago, but we ran into the shared option where we take it from the ocean and we de-treat it and put it into the sewer. We looked into that. We looked into the storage tanks. We looked into.
But we're not gonna put it in the ocean. We're gonna put it in the sewer. We're taking it from the ocean.
And there was a reason why. My memory's not serving me correctly of why we couldn't do that. It was just so long ago, so I apologize. But what we can do is we can certainly find the reasons why we turned those down and report it to city council so they're just knowledgeable on the subject. That's the direction.
Yeah, because the question's
Yeah.
probably going to come up. If it's come up
Yeah.
here, I expect it to come up there. And like I said, the only other thing is I'd throw reclaimed water
Right.
into that mix, not just ocean water. Again, from a conservation point of view, so if we can't do it, we can't do it. But at least have the answer why we can't do it.
Yeah, we're often in a drought in California, in drought situations, which the water gets a lot more expensive at that point. So it is a big consideration as to where our ocean water that we want in our lagoon comes from.
I will say too that recycled water is often referred to as purple pipe water as well, and there's no nearby purple pipe anywhere near us.
There's Redondo High School has it. It goes down PCH. I realize that's not exactly that in here,
Yeah.
but for the quantity of water you're talking about.
Be a big pipe.
Right. But I also, from a health standpoint, don't think you can use recycled water for a swimming pool.
Yeah, not unless West Basin has some pilot project they want to run at
Right.
our new lagoon. But I think it is a good idea just to get the question answered, get that data that we already have, we just can't remember, and put in the words like, and what about reclaimed water? Recycled water.
And I'm not going to bring up electric fire pits, but no, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Was there, Roger, did you have earlier something you wanted to put in a motion that we haven't?
I did want to put in other stuff and I've changed my mind now. I wanted to put in something saying, let's not do the promenade until we do the boat ramp because we'll be smarter then.
That's what it was.
And it may still work out that way, but Jim's argument about only going to the Coastal Commission once is a strong argument. And if I have to pick something today, I definitely want to pick something that has drop off at the hand launch in it. And if you have a hand launch, you have to have ADA at it. I had also forgotten that aspect. So I want to go with option 2 now, and so I don't have any other comments. But that was where I was a while ago.
Okay.
Do we want to put anything in there about a wave maker somehow, for the surfing aspect of surfing training? Yeah, I mean, it's just an option to look at. I don't know how much these things cost.
They're really expensive.
Are they really expensive? All right.
We're already at $31 million.
That's another.
And that's without electric fire pits.
It's,
Okay.
it's not that it's a good idea. Wave pools are awesome.
I know.
When I was saying the things we want to mention in council tomorrow, I forgot one, which was to just bring up the cost analysis that showed the cost we will no longer incur for testing fines and.
Right.
I think that's really important, right? The overall, operating expenses.
Opportunity.
Because we have an operating expense right now that sounds like it's pretty high. And if this thing reduces it by a substantial amount, that's important to bring up.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be an emotion though, but.
No,
certainly.
not emotional.
So do we need a motion?
I'd love a motion that kind of summarizes.
I'll make a
straw poll.
motion that we recommend to the city council a complete renovation with a phased approach with a building placement option 2, I believe was consensus, and promenade design option 2.
Second.
We have a second.
It's good, short, sweet, to the point.
You wanna-
I didn't, I just read it off the screen.
Got it all.
Is that consensus? Does that
Well,
seven
we
zip?
vote.
One quick question. If we vote 2 and then something turns out that we learn something through whatever, we can always,
This is
no
merely
matter
a,
what you decide,
this
you
is
can
merely a
always.
recommendation.
recommending.
It's just
Right.
merely a recommendation to the council.
No, I know, but once you decide a path and you get the entitlements, you could always change it with the cost of needing to go through entitlements, no matter which way you choose on.
Yeah, I mean, there's thresholds for, what kind of a change constitutes having to go back and do this kind of thing all over again for that minor amendment. And we'd have to work with the planning commission to see what that threshold was. It's usually you're changing the intent of what was originally approved.
You mean the coastal commission?
And coastal commission, right.
Yeah.
But before coastal commission, we'd have to go to the harbor commission and then the coastal commission.
Oh, we
right?
said planning commission.
Sorry, yeah. Sorry. Harbor commission, coastal commission.
Thank you.
Would a promenade option make sense where you don't drive an entire one-way loop down because you have a car, you have cars running next to people quite the distance, but rather kind of keep what we have now, but just have a wider turnout, a turnaround area for it, a bigger turning, so we're eating into the.
So that was another thing we didn't really talk about here was there was this whole delay in this coming was part of the delay was the fire codes and fire trucks. And I guess I have since heard different stories, but of having water for putting out a fire and fire trucks access and all of that and how wide it has to be. And that was the whole reason.
The crux of it is
You see what
when
you
you
see.
introduce vehicles into the area, it becomes a fire lane. And there's a lot of requirements to a fire lane that this route does not meet. That said, our fire department is willing to sign off on certain waivers as long as a fire apparatus is installed kind of near that hand launch area. the fear and my thinking was, well, you've got a lane with cars surrounded by water. You've got ocean on one side and a lagoon on the other. What's the big deal? It's a vehicle fire that they're mainly concerned with. So having a fire apparatus, which is like a really heavy duty fire hydrant, essentially, it's one of those big red things that sticks up out of the ground, that would solve fire department's concerns with the fire lane aspect. And we have installed that in all of the options, every single one. So fire code, we're good. Where we're trying to improve upon, and one of the caveats to the fire department being okay with some of these waivers, was we needed to make it so that in no manner was somebody reversing out of a situation with pedestrians nearby. So we looked at, to be honest with you, I showed you 3.5 options. We looked at like 9. One of them was that big turnaround area that Roger was referring to. Oh,
So I think, Rogers, you said you've done a U-turn,
yeah.
but
Yeah, it was like that
most
scene in
people are
Austin
just gonna
Powers,
back
right?
out.
You know,
Yeah, where do you do this turnaround?
And
like if everyone could do a U-turn, problem solved, right? But
but yeah, but if you if you
Lane
create that little
size.
cutout though, to make that a turnaround somehow, and then routed, I don't know how you route the pedestrians in there, but do you see what I'm saying?
No,
You
we've
push the
looked
whole
into
thing.
that. We've looked into that. It's almost like the version where we're extending the whole width of the promenade out towards the riprap. We would have to do the same thing in that consolidated area near the hand launch. But it would need to be the turning radius for a truck with a trailer,
Right.
which is a very extensive, essentially cul-de-sac, right? That is super expensive, even more so than the over the riprap version, which was 3.25 million.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
it has to be the length of a trailer plus a vehicle.
Correct.
I feel like we're doing the work that the subcommittee already did.
Yep.
We've eliminated a lot of options because it just didn't make
We need
sense.
to have faith in what the subcommittee uncovered and discussed. We are faced with decisions based on the recommendations and the discussions of the subcommittee. If we then go and second guess all these discussions and try to think of more methodologies to accomplish this, then why have the subcommittee in the first place?
And we do have a motion. Do we have a second on that
I
motion?
second it.
Yeah, we
Okay.
do.
And we have discussed it and discussed it and discussed it.
All right, let's have a vote.
You want to do? a
Oh,
roll
I got
call
it. Commissioner Abelman,
I'm in favor, aye.
Commissioner Falk,
Aye.
Commissioner Kilroy,
Aye.
Commissioner Callahan,
Aye.
Commissioner Bauer,
Aye.
Commissioner Carlson,
Aye.
Chair Kazan.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Yay.
There we go.
We've got a scope.
Should be
I have one more question.
Thanks, Perry. Debrief tomorrow, yeah?
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Very good. Easy to understand.
You're gonna make these
Mhm.
electric fireplaces. It's
And then Greg, you'll take those items, sorry, I just realized you're waiting on me. You'll take those items that we mentioned to council as well?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I was looking at your thing and not announcing it. We're now up to M1 Director's Report.
Thank you, thank you. I do have a few updates for you tonight. First, at the last meeting, I gave you a breakwater repair update. I don't really have any updates from that last update. Obviously, the breakwater repair has hit a permitting delay with the Water Board and the U.S. Army Corps. U.S. Army Corps is the one seeking the permits. The Water Board's the one putting some stress on the U.S. Army at this point. So we're estimating that the contract advertising won't happen until October, which is just a month away. Contract is expected to be awarded in December, and work will progress in spring of 2025. Since I made that announcement last month, the U.S. Army Corps did do their annual inspection that they do every year of the break wall, and they verbally, we're getting a written report soon, but they verbally told our Public Works Department that nothing's really changed since the last year's annual inspection. So they're confident that even though we're not going to have this repair done before this next winter season, that it'll withstand any storm. That's the story. We've talked about the new public boat launch a bit this night. City Council finally approved a contract with Moffett and Nichol. It was last month to design the new one at Mold D. We did a project kickoff last week, Dave?
September 4th, yes.
September 4th. They're going to be doing a site visit this week or next week with
Yes,
the contractor.
Yeah, we're still working on the exact date. In the next 2 weeks, we're going to be doing an on-site visit to Moldy. Harbor Patrol has also offered an opportunity for us to view it from the water as well, to check out the site.
Yeah. And obviously, the kind of the first things that we're undertaking are all the studies, the parking, the traffic, the demand study, wave attenuation. So Dave's going to be busy trying to get as many as-built construction drawings as possible so they can start these studies that are necessary. International Boardwalk Pavers, that project is actually underway.
Very good, yeah.
Down there today, looking good.
It looks good, doesn't it? It looks really good. They're at the quality seafood point. So they started at the Fun Factory, and they moved all the way over to quality seafood. When you first see it, the color looks a little dull, but that's because of the sand that's over there and the dust. They're going to clean that up, and then I think as of today, they put a sealant on it, and the sealant itself is, one, protects the pavers, but two, actually makes the color pop a bit. So I think, when you go out there a couple days from now, or even a little bit past, you'll see it kind of brighten up a little bit too. Blade signs at International Boardwalk, we got a contract approved to start that project. We are underway on a design, like a uniform kind of like look for each one. Mio is scheduled to go to the International Boardwalk tenant meeting on Thursday of this week to kind of introduce the concept. They've heard about it already, but then to start procuring their individual logos so that we can, put their logo design in the signs itself. So that's ongoing. Seabass Grow Pens, that contract is scheduled to be awarded on September 17th. It's in my queue to review the staff report as we speak. This group did a great job of looking for locations. We landed on the Harbor Patrol docks. That's where they'll go. It's a contract with Clark McNulty. He's going to be procuring the materials and constructing it for about $67,000. International Boardwalk Storefront Improvement Program. City Council approved two contracts for that. The first was for Trade Winds. The second was for Booze Treasure. We've got a few more in the queue, people who are interested, and we're hopeful that we can spend more of that money. Quick reminder, on September 30th, we have a new commission orientation meeting. We have a new commissioner that's going to be joining us next month. He's going to be required to go to that, but the city clerk is encouraging anybody who may want just a refresher. It's at Council Chambers, 6 p.m., September 30th. Let me know if you want to go. It is an RSVP situation, but probably worthwhile. And next meeting, we're scheduled for October 14th. There's going to be two items on the agenda at least. One is going to be selecting a new chair and vice chair. Leslie, great job for the year.
Yay.
Appreciate you leading the charge there.
Thank you, Mr. Connor.
And then we're also going to be looking at a commercial plan. So it's going to be tailored like the amenities plan where it's a vision. But it's going to be looking at how we structure our leaseholds, how we group our leaseholds, what kind of uses we should be looking at. And it's really going to be a vision for myself, for city council, while we could go, future negotiations and things like that.
Will
So
the gentleman that has come before us before, who
Brian
talks
Campbell?
about leases, be here?
He will not, because this is more of a vision of where we want to go, unless, what the vacancy rate is. So he won't be here for that.
That's not his thing. yeah.
That's not his thing, right? So let me know if you can't go. I know Lisa won't be able to attend, and I know Vicky won't be able to attend. So we will be down to 5. So let me know, because I do want a quorum. We need at least 4 to be able to talk about it.
I'm curious as to where that idea for the commercial plan came from, because it's brilliant. I mean, I love it, but who thought of that?
Oh, I think
Our
he's sitting
illustrious
in the
leader over here,
audience.
yeah.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah.
well, my hat's off to our illustrious leader. Thank you, sir. Very good.
It's October 14th?
I believe so, yeah.
That's Columbus/Indigenous People Day.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
So I believe
That's a federal
Yeah, I didn't have it
holiday.
on my
this should be closed.
calendar.
Oh.
What's closed?
All
Us?
federal,
Everything's federal.
state, and government.
What?
Might be.
I mean, it is scheduled that day, but
No, Columbus.
It is scheduled for that day. I don't know if that's a recognized city holiday, though. I think we're
I think
here.
it's a federal holiday.
I'll look into it.
Yeah. Jim, do you know?
Yeah, I'll have to look into it. I'll let you guys know. And then finally, before I turn it over to you for any follow-up questions that you may have on the director's report, I do want to quickly recognize Matt Kilroy. This is his last meeting with us. He's officially termed out.
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna
Turned
miss.
out, declined an invitation to the Youth Commission to apply for it. So yeah, go ahead. But yes,
No,
this
I
is
mean,
my-
I'm gonna miss your big perspective kind of atmosphere on your outlook on things. It's been 8 years here, but it's over 30 years, correct me if I'm wrong, in terms of just volunteer work, essentially. I mean, he was on the city council, planning commission, budget and finance, GPAC.
Okay. So
Anything else?
It started with the Environmental and Public Utilities Commission, which then became or rolled into the Public Works Commission,
Okay.
then the Public Safety Commission, then the Planning Commission, then City Council, Budget and Finance, and the Harbor Commission. And I didn't term out on every single one of those commissions, but I think it's 38 years.
Wow.
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 It's a lot of
And,
service.
yeah.
I mean, I applaud you. That's a lot of time to be volunteering your time and expertise. I
I've
just want to
met-
thank you for the Harbor Commission component specifically.
I appreciate it.
And-
And I've met some great people, not just on this commission, but on other commissions. And working with staff, it's been, it's felt really good to be a part of what's been going on in Redondo Beach and to go around and look and see, you had some kind of impact here and there in the city. And so thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank all of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you,
For your
man.
service.
It'll be weird not having a meeting.
And this is the end. If there was another commission that kind of drew to you, you wouldn't join it? You wouldn't?
No, if there was something, so like, I was asked to join GPAC, I was asked to join the Charter Review Committee. I have, if there was something I thought that I could lend a unique voice to or bring something positive to it, I'd be willing. I'm not that old, I'm not ready to give up everything. I'm still on AYSO, 2 AYSO boards, and I'm still heavily involved in that. So I'm still out there doing stuff. It's just it's one of the things with term limits, right? So, and as an editorial aside, I was going to save this for referrals to staff and spend more time running up the clock. It would be great if the people of Redondo Beach realize the impact that the Harbor and Pier area has on the city as a whole, not just the Harbor and Pier, from a financial aspect and other aspects. And to that point, I urge the commission and staff to reach out to the north end. Roger, you're District 3, I believe. I don't believe we have anybody now from District.
He's 4.
You're 4, well, great. That's, because making sure that we have representation on the commission from all areas of the city, I think is really important. And like I said, a lot of people don't understand the impact that each of the special places in Redondo Beach have on the whole. Whether it's the Harbor and Pier, whether it's Riviera Village, whether it's the Galleria, it all has an impact on all of us, and the city needs to realize that.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. That's it, I'm done.
Thank you, Matt.
And I have no referrals to staff, by the way.
You should have one just out of, looking at how many fire pits there actually are in Redondo now, kind of thing.
I item N, commission items, referrals to staff. I don't have any.
I don't have any.
I don't have any either.
I just have a story. Did you see that the main parking structure in downtown Manhattan Beach got red tagged and is coming down?
Yes,
I
we
did
So
were just in it.
that little 2 or 3 story one, you know, kind of in the middle of
It's
town near City Hall?
primarily a steel structure, isn't it? Which one?
I think so, yeah.
Steel
But,
frame.
you know, good
Highland
on
and
us and good on the city for getting ahead of this in the
Or all
pier
the
structure.
seismic ones, right?
Yeah.
There was a
across.
short article in the Easy Reader about it where they were about to start retrofitting it and said, whoa, close it, tear it down. So, you know, and, you know, we know from looking at stuff 10, 20 years ago what a new parking garage is gonna cost. So, you know, that's an expensive problem, and it's a downtown problem, and it's a tough problem. And, you know, fortunately, we're doing work in the pier parking structure through the back of the Fun Factory and stuff like that. So, you know, hopefully we've avoided that. Yeah.
Thank you.
I did want to say thank you for typing out and sending your director's report ahead. For years, it was just a verbal one, and it's so nice to actually get it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
I have a question.
Yes.
Did you ever hear back from the Coastal Commission about their approval on an operator for the city sailing?
Yes. So we held a meeting with them a week and a half ago and answered some more questions about the potential new operator. We're now with those answers in hand. We are waiting on a decision.
Wow, thank
So,
you.
Yeah, hopefully just a couple weeks.
I just want to say it was sad to see Hot Dog on a Stick go.
I know.
Oh, we all went down, yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Anything else? Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in
That's your
favor?
last one.
Motion, I know.
Yeah.
Steve makes it. Wow.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just said that.